The next morning, when the bright winter sun spilled through the window, Leo Wallace woke up. He opened his eyes to see a certain young woman still sleeping soundly in his arms. Her waterfall of black hair was scattered across his chest and shoulders. Leaning in, he could smell a faint, clean fragrance. Half her face was buried in the comforter, the other half exposed, but even that partial view of her sleeping face was breathtakingly beautiful. Leo smiled. Looking at his gorgeous girlfriend nestled in his arms, he felt a sense of contentment that nearly overflowed. How many guys woke up in the morning to find a girl this beautiful lying beside them? Oh, right. Most guys sleep alone. They don't see a beautiful girl, or any girl for that matter. Most guys wake up to a wall. Miss Sterling was still fast asleep. Unwilling to disturb her, Leo carefully slipped out of bed. As he put on his slippers, he happened to glance at the foot of the bed and saw the Blackie the Leo Hammer doll, which had been unceremoniously kicked away at some point during the night. Now that the girl had the real-life Leo Hammer, the doll version's status had taken a nosedive. And right at this moment, by pure chance, one of her slender feet had stretched out from under the covers and was resting squarely on it. The little fox hadn't been kidding. She really did use it as a footrest. Leo looked at the doll version of himself, then at the delicate foot resting on its forehead. Without a second thought, he reached down, snatched the doll, and tossed it onto the nightstand. Why should you get all the good stuff? That's right. Even if it was just a doll, he was still going to be jealous. After dealing with his stuffed animal rival, Leo intended to gently tuck Claire's blanket back around her, covering the foot that had strayed out. But as he went to pull up the comforter, he couldn't help but stare for a moment longer. The elegant arch, the pale, slender shape, the perfectly rounded toes. Not that Leo Wallace was paying attention to any of those details. It was just a foot. What was there to see? He calmly took another look, then leaned in for a closer one. One last, super quick peek, and then he'd cover up. Have you had enough of a look? A familiar melodic voice asked. He subconsciously shook his head. Not yet, just a little longer. Then he snapped back to reality. His expression froze. He slowly raised his head to see Claire Sterling, now awake and sitting up in bed, watching him with an amused smirk. Go on, she said. Why'd you stop looking? Leo immediately yanked the comforter over her feet, stood up straight, and assumed an air of righteous dignity. There was nothing to see. I was just worried your leg might get cold, so I was covering you up. That's all. I'm going to go wash up. He turned and walked away, his posture as proud and noble as a Boy Scout who'd just done a good deed without seeking recognition. Of course, the moment he was out the door, that dignified stride turned into a panicked retreat. Sitting on the bed, Claire watched him go, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She lazily lay back down, kicked the covers away again, and lifted her long legs into the air, admiring her own feet. She wiggled her toes playfully, a small, proud smile gracing her lips. That silly Leo Hammer. All I have to do is wiggle my toes, and he's done for. Thinking of Leo Hammer, she instinctively looked around for the doll and spotted it on the nightstand. A small question mark appeared over her head. How to get over there? Then, as if guessing the truth, Miss Sterling let out another laugh. She reached over, grabbed the poor doll, and hugged it to her chest. Looking at its innocent, button-eyed face, she whispered with a smirk, "It's not your fault. A certain little fool. He even gets jealous of a doll." After leaving the bedroom, Leo went to the bathroom and quickly washed up before heading downstairs to the first-floor living room. The moment he reached the bottom of the stairs, he smelled the aroma of food coming from the kitchen. He followed the scent with his eyes and saw Mrs. Fong, the Sterling's housekeeper, carrying a tray of freshly made breakfast out of the kitchen. The dining table was already laden with an assortment of dishes. There were simple things like bagels, sausage links, oatmeal, and fruit, but they were accompanied by a dazzling array of exquisite dim sum that was so lavish it was astonishing. Everything looked and smelled perfect, prepared with an authentic, flawless technique. Even Leo, a skilled cook himself, was taken aback. "Mrs. Fong, did you make all of this?" Mrs. Fong smiled when she saw him. "Good morning, young gentleman." Hearing his question, she smiled warmly. "Yes. I spent a few years as a chef at the Grand Majestic back in my day. I know a little something about Cantonese cuisine." Leo was stunned. The Grand Majestic? The one that's supposed to be the most prestigious, old-school, fine dining establishment in the region. The one they call the West Point of Cantonese cuisine. Once the information registered, Leo was filled with a profound sense of respect for the woman standing before him. She knows a little something? This housekeeper. She was even more of a hidden master than Mr. Show. A little while later, Claire got up, washed up, and came downstairs. "Morning, Mrs. Fong," she said, greeting her housekeeper with familiar affection. Then she glanced at Leo. Morning, you little pervert. Leo shot up. What? Who's a pervert? Claire gave him another look and said airily, whoever was staring at my feet, that's who. Leo fell silent. A direct hit. Utterly defeated. They sat down at the table. Looking at the magnificent breakfast spread, Claire smiled and praised the housekeeper. You've worked so hard, Mrs. Phone. Once I've had your cooking, I can't stand to eat breakfast anywhere else. Mrs. Phone looked at her young mistress with doting eyes. Then you should eat more while you're home. You went off to college and came back thinner. She then turned to Leo, kindly handing him a bowl of oatmeal. Leo, have some of this. It's made with steel-cut oats and dates. A young man like you needs to keep his strength up. You'll need it later. Leo quickly thanked her and took the bowl. After a few bites, it suddenly dawned on him. Wait a minute. What does she mean? I'll need it later. After breakfast, Claire still felt a bit sleepy and got up to go back upstairs for a nap. Before she left, she glanced at Leo. Coming. Leo shook his head. I'm not tired anymore. I'm going to take a walk around the neighborhood to get some air. The girl nodded, not insisting. But as she walked up the stairs, she tossed a comment over her shoulder. Fine then. It's a little chilly in my room, so I was going to put on a pair of stockings to sleep. Too bad a certain someone won't get to see. I guess the Leo hammer doll gets all the luck. Leo froze. Bertha Sue, wait a second. I think I'm suddenly feeling a little sleepy again. But it was too late to change his mind now. As he watched his girlfriend leisurely ascend the stairs, Leo's heart filled with endless regret. Such a beautiful sight, and only that wretched doll would get to enjoy it. That stupid doll deserves to be destroyed. I'll have to think a way to get rid of it later. His mind churning with malicious plans, Leo headed out the door for his walk. He crossed the front yard and stepped onto the tree-lined path of Coral Court. The air on a Northwood winter morning was crisp and cold. A single deep breath felt like it chilled him to the bone, instantly waking him up. All sleepiness vanished, and his stray thoughts dissipated with it. The neighborhood landscaping was impeccable, and as Leo strolled down the path, he saw several other residents out for their morning exercises. He hadn't been walking for long when he saw a familiar figure jogging toward him from a distance. Mr. Joe. Leo recognized the man and raised a hand in greeting. Morning. The retired Special Forces veteran jogging toward him stopped in front of Leo and nodded back. Morning. It was impossible to tell how many laps he'd run. But even on such a cold morning, the man was wearing only a thin tank top, revealing powerful, muscular arms and an upper body where every fiber seemed to contain explosive strength. Leo looked on with a hint of admiration, then smiled and asked, Mr. Joe, you're up exercising this early? Mr. Joe nodded with a smile. Train in the dead of winter, train in the heat of summer. For a martial artist, honing the body is a daily commitment you can't slack on. He looked at Leo and offered some well-meaning advice. It's the same for you young people. Don't sleep in and be lazy. You should exercise more when you have the chance. It's good for you. He suddenly paused mid-sentence. Exercise. I wonder if the young mistress and this kid did some exercise of their own last night after she went upstairs with those handcuffs. Leo noticed Mr. Joe's expression freeze for a moment. Mr. Joe, are you okay? He asked, concerned. Mr. Joe took a quick, deep breath, his expression becoming serene. I'm fine, but inside, his pupils were quaking. This intelligence log is getting harder and harder to write. Leo didn't notice the veteran's inner turmoil. Instead, his words had sparked a bit of curiosity. Mr. Joe, you used to practice martial arts. He only knew that the Sterling's driver and bodyguard was a retired elite soldier from a northern military command. A formidable man who, even under the influence of Bertha Sue's bad luck lunch debuff, had still managed to win over 30 top honors in military competitions. But he'd also witnessed with his own eyes that night at the Dynasty Lounge how this stoic man, once he made his move, could single-handedly take down almost an entire criminal gang with thunderous force. His moves that night, while possessing the brutal efficiency of a soldier, also had the composed grace of a martial artist. At Leo's question, Mr. Joe collected himself and nodded frankly. Yeah, been training since I was a kid. I started when I was 8, studying Baji Quan. I spent 2.5 years just holding stances and 8 years striking trees. I'm not particularly talented, so it took me a full 12 years just to get the basic form down. He spoke humbly, but Leo knew just how terrifyingly powerful the unassuming man in front of him truly was. After the incident at the Dynasty Lounge, he and Claire had chatted about it privately back at a motel. Miss Sterling had casually mentioned that she'd once overheard her old man talking about it. Mr. Joe had started training at 8, and by 20, his mastery of external martial arts was nearly at its peak. After enlisting, the rigors of military life and the crucible of combat allowed him to merge his hard-won battlefield experience with over a decade of martial arts training, bringing his skills to a state of complete perfection. Now, at 36 or 37, his physique, spirit, and experience were all at their absolute zenith. In terms of pure combat ability, in a one-on-one fight with melee weapons or bare hands, he was virtually invincible in this part of the country. The number of people who could even trade a few blows with him could probably be counted on one hand. Leo's thoughts returned to the present. He felt a spark of interest and looked at the retired soldier. "Mr. Zhou, do you think I have any aptitude for martial arts? When I was a kid, I met this wandering master who told me I had a unique bone structure and was a martial arts prodigy. He sold me a bunch of secret manuals." Mr. Zhou looked him over. "And then he tricked you out of your allowance money and gave you a copy of a comic book about the Buddha's palm technique?" Leo was filled with respect. "Mr. Zhou, you can tell fortunes too." The veteran's face was expressionless. "I've seen Kung Fu hustle." Jokes aside, Leo was serious. He looked at Mr. Zhou and asked sincerely, "Could you teach me a few moves?" Mr. Zhou frowned slightly. "Why the sudden interest? Martial arts is for strengthening the body, not for brawling." It was a kind warning. But Leo shook his head, a hint of embarrassment on his face. "It's not about that. It's just, I was thinking about what happened at the Dynasty Lounge. When real danger comes, I can't always count on you being there to save the day. I want to be able to rely on my own strength. At the very least, I want to be able to protect the person I love from harm." As he said this, his tone grew earnest. The retired soldier was taken aback. Then, great. He hadn't expected to get a mouthful of PDA on his morning run. It was a bittersweet feeling, but the young man's serious words and solemn expression moved him. After a moment of thought, he looked at Leo again. "Training is hard work." Leo grinned. "I can handle it." After sizing him up one more time, Mr. Zhou finally seemed to make a decision. He nodded. "All right." A few moments later, in the second-level basement of the Sterling Villa, Leo hadn't seen this part of the house last night. Now, being led down by Mr. Zhou, he was surprised to find that the villa had a dedicated training hall in the basement. Aside from some standard modern gym equipment, there were numerous traditional Chinese martial arts training tools, including the classic wooden dummy. Dressed in a training uniform, Mr. Zhou stood before Leo with his hands behind his back, his presence as imposing and unmovable as a mountain. The path of martial arts is about talent, but it's even more about sweat. You're starting late, so your potential has a ceiling. Even to reach a normal level of skill, you'll have to work several times harder than anyone else. Sunlight streamed through a skylight, illuminating the basement training hall. Mr. Zhou, dressed in a loose training uniform, stood with his feet apart, his posture erect. In front of his two-person audience, he raised his fists and began a demonstration. He took a deep breath, his expression solemn. His hands clenched in a fist and slowly rose, his eyes as deep and calm as the ocean, then suddenly sharp and determined. With a stomp that seemed to shake the floor, he exploded with power. A series of sharp cracks echoed from his joints like a clap of thunder. He sank his waist, twisted his hips, and his body spun as he unleashed a torrent of punches, each one whistling through the air with heavy force. His muscles tensed like a bowstring drawn taut, his breath and footwork perfectly synchronized. Every movement was a symphony of power and rhythm. For the final move, he sank low and executed a spinning shoulder strike, his shoulder acting as a fist, and slammed violently into the wooden training dummy. Bang! The entire training hall vibrated with the resounding impact. The wooden dummy trembled violently, taking a long moment to settle. It was the very essence of Baji Quan. Move like a drawn bow, strike like exploding thunder. After finishing the set, Mr. Zhou slowly exhaled a plume of white air and calmly returned to a neutral stance. He was composed and serene, the very picture of a grandmaster. It had been a while, but he was quite satisfied with his performance. His spirit and energy were still at their peak, truly capable of remaining unfazed even if a mountain crumbled before him. His aura was still intact. "So, did you get all that?" The retired Special Forces veteran and Baji Quan master asked with a faint smile, turning around to receive the looks of awe and admiration he expected from the two kids. And then he saw them. Leo and Claire were sitting on a nearby bench. Claire was casually cracking sunflower seeds, and Leo was dutifully shelling them for her. They were in their own sweet little world, oblivious to everything else. Claire smiled at Leo. "Thanks for your hard work." She then leaned forward and planted a soft kiss on his lips. "Your reward." The retired soldier froze. His pupils instantly went back into earthquake mode. The Baji Quan master persona vanished, and he immediately reverted to his true role as an intelligence officer, already composing his report in his head. Subject and classmate are eating sunflower seeds. Subject expresses gratitude to classmate. Subject's daily aerobic exercise, 1/5. Bertha Sue is just there to watch the show and eat snacks. Leo, however, while shelling seeds for his girlfriend, hadn't taken his eyes off Mr. Zhou for a second. It was truly an eye-opening, impressive display. That final iron shoulder strike was especially sweet and soft. Oh wait, wrong adjective. He'd just been kissed into a daze by that little fox. That iron shoulder strike was as explosive as thunder. He couldn't imagine what would happen if it hit a person. They'd probably be sent flying for miles. It would be like getting hit by a truck on a rainy night. A shiver ran down his spine. Why did that feel so familiar? The veteran's demonstration had its intended effect. Leo was now more determined than ever to become a student. However, according to Mr. Zhou, it was a process that couldn't be rushed. Haste makes waste. Since you're just starting, you can't get ahead of yourself. You have to build a solid foundation. The Special Forces soldier, having recently honed his literary skills writing intelligence reports, was now a master of proverbs and idioms. Leo nodded in understanding. So, I start with stance training. Mr. Zhou nodded. You'll start with 2 hours. As it turned out, martial arts was grueling work. With Mr. Zhou's guidance, Leo adjusted his posture, sinking his hips, widening his stance, and holding his fists out in front of him, and began his stance training. The first few minutes were manageable. The body of an 18-year-old could take a lot. But soon, beads of sweat began to form on his forehead. A little while later, his knees started to ache, and his muscles began to strain. His outstretched arms instinctively started to droop, but his instructor immediately barked at him. Hold him up. If your form is wrong, it's all for nothing. Leo took a deep breath and grit his teeth, pushing on. Once he decided to do something, he wouldn't quit halfway. In his past life, it was that same grit that had allowed him to fight his way to the top after college. This life would be no different. Time ticked by. Sunlight streamed down from the skylight, casting the shadow of his unwavering figure onto the floor of the training hall. His body trembled slightly, and sweat poured from him like rain. But he never complained, never cried out, never gave up. He just silently grit his teeth and held on. Claire, who had been watching from the sidelines, couldn't bear it any longer. She stood up, about to tell him to take a break, but before she could speak, Mr. Zhou stepped to her side, placed a hand on her shoulder, and shook his head, silently stopping her. Claire frowned. Normally, if anyone treated Leo like this, she would have already made a throat-slitting gesture at her bodyguard and ordered him to take care of it. But the person doing it was her bodyguard. She couldn't exactly have Mr. Zhou take care of himself. Well, maybe she could. Meeting his young mistress's thoughtful gaze, even a man as stoic as Mr. Zhou felt his scalp tingle. He took a deep breath and spoke in a low voice. Miss, without enduring hardship, martial arts training is a waste of time. If Leo truly wants to learn something at his age, he'll have to put in several times more effort than others. Claire's frown deepened. But he doesn't need to learn this. Mr. Zhou shook his head. You're right, he doesn't. I told him the same thing at first. But he insisted. He said, Mr. Zhou paused and looked at his young boss, that he hopes to be able to protect the person he loves with his own strength when danger comes. Claire was stunned. She looked over at Leo, who was still gritting his teeth in his stance, his face drenched in sweat. She murmured, as if to herself, He's doing this for that. Mr. Zhou nodded, his gaze also turning toward the young man in the training hall, a look of admiration in his eyes. Yes, a martial artist must hold their breath and channel their spirit. Since Leo has this goal in his heart, forget 2 hours of stance training. You could probably double his workload, and that kid would still endure it. Claire quietly watched the determined figure, her eyes filled with a warm, soft light. Yes, she said, I believe him too. She believed in the silly boy's love for her. She believed in the weight that love held for him. And most of all, she believed in the weight she held in his heart. She turned to the man beside her and smiled. Thank you, Mr. Zhou. Mr. Zhou gave a steady smile. You're too kind, miss. It's what I should do. Though he said that the veteran was inwardly wiping away cold sweat, immensely relieved. Phew, that was close. I managed to fix that just in time. I was almost on the receiving end of the young mistress's wrath. Claire glanced at Leo one last time, then made a decision. I'm going upstairs. Mr. Zhou, you stay here and train with him. I'm going to go cook him something nice. With that, she turned and walked away with a spring in her step. The Special Forces soldier froze on the spot. A moment later, he snapped out of it and rushed after her. Miss, there's really no need for that. Another 3-chapter day. Remember to send reminders and gifts a little bow from me. After 2 grueling hours of stance training, Leo staggered off the training floor, his legs feeling like jelly. He collapsed onto the ground, letting out a long sigh of relief. Strangely, he also felt refreshed and invigorated, as if every pore in his body had been cleansed by the sweat. He looked up at Mr. Zhou, who was walking over, and grinned. Mr. Zhou, what's next? Right now, he was bursting with confidence and a sense of accomplishment. If he could steadily take such a difficult first step, then any remaining challenges shouldn't be challenges at all. Until the retired soldier reached him and spoke with a complicated expression. Next, we eat. Seeing Leo's confused look, Mr. Zhou added gravely, the young mistress. Just cook. The air suddenly went still. The young man who had been brimming with confidence just a second ago instantly froze, turning into a stone sculpture. He had said that no challenge would be a challenge anymore. But this didn't count. Snapping back to his senses, Leo immediately turned to leave without changing his expression. I just remembered I have something to do. Kevin's mom is having another baby. The retired soldier's reaction time was on full display. Mr. Zhou grabbed the back of Leo's collar and hauled him back. He then began dragging him toward the stairs to the dining room, his face impassive. Good excuse, but useless. The young mistress made this specially for you. If you don't eat it, then I'll have to. Leo was so choked up he could barely speak, but after a moment's thought, he shot Mr. Zhou a sidelong glance. Even if I eat, you're not getting away either. Mr. Zhou, you've worked so hard. It's only fair that your mistress share a little of her cooking with you as a reward, right? This time, it was the veteran's turn to freeze. Leo pressed his advantage. How about we escape together? Mr. Zhou was tempted. Will it work? Leo spoke with righteous conviction. I have an urgent matter, and you're driving me in the Maybach. It's perfectly reasonable, right? Mr. Zhou nodded solemnly. Reasonable. Extremely reasonable. In the end, neither of them managed to escape. They tiptoed up the stairs and into the first-floor living room. Before they could slip out a side door, a pleasant voice called out from behind them. Where are you two going? The food's ready. Come and eat. Both men froze in their tracks. Leo took a deep breath, then resignedly turned and walked toward his girlfriend in the dining room, forcing a smile onto his face. Great, coming. The retired soldier tried to seize the opportunity to sneak away, but the girl's gaze swept over to him. Mr. Zhou, where are you going? I made enough for you, too. Let's eat together. As Leo watched with undisguised schadenfreude, Mr. Zhou's expression twitched. He turned around, forcing a smile that was uglier than a grimace. Great. Thank you for your consideration, miss. With the grim determination of men marching to their execution, the two sat down at the dining table. Claire emerged from the kitchen, gracefully carrying a platter. Dinner is served. The dish was placed in front of the 2 taste testers. Leo and Mr. Zhou braced themselves and looked down at the plate, fully prepared for a visual assault that would cause their pupils to quake. But upon seeing it, they both froze. Is this? Sautéed potatoes, eggplant, and peppers. Claire nodded with casual confidence. Yeah, can't you tell? It wasn't that they couldn't tell. On the contrary, they recognized it instantly. The potatoes were potatoes, the eggplant was eggplant, and the peppers were peppers. The classic dish looked incredibly authentic, with vibrant colors and an enticing aroma. There was absolutely nothing wrong with its appearance. After a moment of shock, Leo and Mr. Zhou exchanged a look, and their faces fell again. If there's nothing wrong with the look and smell, then the problem must be the taste. Claire grew impatient. Well, try it. The 2 men swallowed hard, looked at each other again, and forced smiles. Mr. Zhou, you first. No, I'm just a driver. The young gentleman should go first. After a few rounds of polite deferrals, neither had picked up their chopsticks. The girl standing nearby narrowed her eyes, a dangerous glint flashing within them. Are you two not going to eat? Killing intent. Instantly, the hair on both men's necks stood on end. No, we're dying to eat it. Finally, out of excuses, they exchanged one last look, picked up their chopsticks, and grimly put a piece of the food in their mouths. A moment of chewing, a swallow. Then both Leo and Mr. Zhou froze again. It was smooth, the flavors were rich and layered, the potatoes were soft and delicious, and the eggplant was tender and juicy. It had the characteristic savory sweet flavor of the regional cuisine, but it wasn't the least bit greasy. The 2 men were floored. This is something Bertha, Sue, / the young mistress could actually make. Claire's gaze swept over them, an eyebrow raised. So, Leo and Mr. Joe vigorously nodded and gave her a thumbs up, showering her with praise. Then they cautiously asked, "You made this yourself?" Flattered by the compliments, a smile appeared on the girl's face. She explained casually, "Mrs. Fong helped. We made it together." "Mrs. Fong?" The two men suddenly understood. No wonder. With a top-tier professional chef overseeing the operation, it was no surprise the dish looked, smelled, and tasted perfect. They had just narrowly escaped with their lives from the clutches of the dark cuisine maiden. Seeing the change in their expressions, Claire grew slightly dissatisfied and emphasized, "It was a collaboration between me and Mrs. Fong. I put a lot of effort into this dish, too." Just then, Mrs. Fong came out of the kitchen. Hearing the girl's defense, she added with a warm smile, "That's right. I was just helping out on the side." When it comes to this dish, the young mistress did most of the heavy lifting. Heavy lifting as in she heavily helped wash the vegetables, and heavily helped turn on the gas stove, and heavily helped pour the oil into the pan. Mrs. Fong had only done the other, insignificant 95% of the work. Hearing Mrs. Feng's confirmation, Leo and Mr. Joe were somewhat convinced. They looked at Claire with expressions of awe and amazement. "You've really improved so much. The young mistress has grown up." Claire maintained a modest, proud silence. Mrs. Fong stood beside her, smiling warmly and clapping in praise. In truth, even the 5% Claire had done was riddled with mistakes, all of which Mrs. Fong had miraculously managed to salvage. But of course, she would never reveal that. After lunch, Leo didn't immediately jump into his second training session. He needed to rest and digest, which also gave him a good excuse to spend time with his girlfriend. Claire pulled him over to the living room, couch to lie down and watch a movie. Mr. Sterling, it turned out, also had a sizable collection of DVDs. As Leo sifted through them, he didn't find any with special 3, 4, or 5-star markings. Not as discerning as Mr. Chien. His taste is just average. The young couple picked a movie at random and snuggled comfortably on the sofa. The scene was just like the ones back at the single slaughterhouse. The sight of it caused another secret earthquake in Mr. Joe's pupils. He had gotten used to this back at their little beach house. But now, the scene had moved from their private love nest to the official Sterling residence in Northwood. This was a formal entering of the house. It easily led to some ominous predictions. Next time, would these two troublemakers be cuddling right in front of the big boss at his penthouse apartment in the Concord? The thought was too terrifying to contemplate. In contrast to Mr. Joe's inner turmoil, the Sterling's housekeeper of 30 years remained calm and unfazed. Mrs. Fong even thoughtfully brought over a blanket to cover the couple on the sofa, gently reminding them not to catch a cold. Then she brought them 2 cups of freshly brewed hot tea to warm them up. Leo took a sip. To his surprise, the tea Mrs. Fong brewed was also leagues better than anything he usually drank. "When I was younger, I got my master certification as a tea artisan in Yunnan," Mrs. Fong explained with a gentle, humble smile when asked. "I know a little bit about the art of tea." She made sure to tuck the blanket in for her mistress before turning to leave, her service impeccably thoughtful. When another cup of tea was delivered to Mr. Joe, he thanked her gratefully, then quickly pulled her aside to whisper, "Mrs. Fong," about the young mistress and Leo. "Mr. Sterling doesn't know the full situation yet. If he asks you about it later, maybe you could also—" The implication was clear. Mrs. Fong understood instantly and smiled warmly. "What situation? I'm getting old. My memory isn't what it used to be. All I remember is the young mistress bringing a classmate home. It's natural for classmates to be close, to watch movies, eat meals, play some games, and take some naps together. Seems perfectly reasonable, doesn't it?" Mr. Joe froze. The Tao of reasonableness resides in the heart. The retired soldier was filled with a sudden, profound respect for his senior colleague. Now he understood. This was why she had been with the Sterling family for 30 years. Her level of mastery was far beyond his own. After watching a movie on the couch with his girlfriend, the afternoon arrived. Leo once again followed Mr. Joe down to the basement training hall to begin his next session. It was stance training again. The foundation had to be solid. This time, Mr. Joe adjusted Leo's posture, demonstrating a standard Baji Quan stance. Practicing this way was far more difficult and intense than the morning session. Leo followed his instructions without complaint. Even though he was once again drenched in sweat, his muscles aching and legs trembling, he persevered without a single word of complaint. It got to the point where even Claire, watching from the side, couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Even Mr. Zhou was moved. He hadn't expected the young man to possess such a calm and steady mind, a level of fortitude and persistence that rivaled, or even surpassed, that of most adults. At first, he had only agreed to teach him because he couldn't refuse the request. But now, he felt a genuine curiosity and anticipation, believing that perhaps the boy before him was a rough diamond that, with enough polishing, could shine with a brilliance that would move everyone. After an afternoon of stance training, Leo was exhausted but strangely exhilarated. He felt as if he was starting to find the right path, and the movements felt more natural than they had in the morning. That evening, the third session began. In the basement training hall, the veteran, dressed in his loose uniform, didn't have Leo continue with stance training. Instead, he told him that every evening he would teach him something different. Baji Quan is an external martial art. It's faster to learn than internal styles, but it still requires time and effort. It can't be mastered in a day or two. From now on, you'll continue your stance training daily to build your foundation. However, I can also teach you some practical, fast-learning techniques. These practical techniques were military combat skills. Mr. Zhou had modified them slightly, removing some of the more lethal aspects. But when he demonstrated them for Leo, every punch and kick whistled through the air with immense power, far more formidable than the flashy but ineffective moves of something like Taekwondo. According to him, his young mistress had learned some of these skills when she was younger. So, it was the girl's turn to help demonstrate. He had Leo spar directly with her. Standing in front of his girlfriend, Leo was, for a split second, considering whether he should go easy on Bertha Sue. The next second, all he saw was the girl in front of him give him a dazzling smile. Then his vision blurred. A fragrant breeze washed over him as her body moved into his. His arm was grabbed, his feet lost their balance, and he felt himself being lifted by an incredible force before his back slammed onto the ground. A perfect, clean, and beautiful shoulder throw. Lying on the floor, Leo's head was spinning. He was getting a taste of what that thug, Gavin Zhang, had felt. Standing to the side, Mr. Zhou nodded with a smile. The young mistress's close-quarters combat technique, using skill to overcome strength. She hasn't lost it. Before he could finish, the girl was already crouching beside Leo with a smile. She leaned down and kissed him on the lips. Does it hurt? The retired soldier was speechless. This was just heartbreaking PDA. As his eyes quaked, he gravely made another entry in his mental logbook. Subject's daily aerobic exercise, 2/5. Over the next few days, Leo simply stayed at the Sterling Villa in Coral Court. He had called his parents on the first day to let them know, and they had no objections. The young couple was getting along well, perfectly reasonable. Besides, his parents knew the Sterlings had a housekeeper and that driver, little Zhou, the one who liked to have earthquakes. The next few days passed by peacefully. For Leo, it felt like he was back at the LNS house. He'd wake up next to his girlfriend, they'd eat breakfast, take a walk around the neighborhood, and then curl up on the couch to watch a movie in the afternoon. Of course, there were a few new additions to the routine. The good news was that he didn't have to cook. With Mrs. Fong, the Sterling's housekeeper of 30 years, in the kitchen, every meal was like opening a mystery box, with dishes from all over the country making an appearance. As it happens, I used to run restaurants and work as a head chef in Hunan, Hubei, Portland, Chengdu. I exchanged some ideas with the local culinary masters. So I know a little something. This line had become the standard, friendly explanation from the woman. The bad news was that his daily schedule now included the grueling task of martial arts training. It was truly exhausting. Stance training in the morning. Stance training in the afternoon. In the evening, he learned military combat techniques from the retired soldier. According to Mr. Zhou, the former built a foundation while the latter provided practical, quick-to-learn skills that could be effective immediately. Occasionally, Claire would come down to the basement training hall to spar with him. But sometimes, as they practiced, the close physical contact would create a pink, ambiguous atmosphere. As their instructor, Mr. Zhou could only pretend not to notice, turning his head away as his eyes quaked, and he made another entry in his intelligence log. Subject's daily aerobic exercise, 7/5. Subject's daily aerobic exercise, 11/5. Subject is training diligently today. Her close-quarters combat skills are excellent. She defeats her opponent with a kiss. Wait, cross that out. She defeats her opponent with one move. Far away in Berkeley, Mr. Sterling was very satisfied with his trusted subordinate's daily reports. He was, however, a little surprised. Why had his precious daughter suddenly become so interested in exercise? A while ago, it was daily intimacy sessions and yoga. and now it was aerobic exercise. And why was she exceeding her daily quota so many times? Little Joe, make sure that girl takes care of herself. Don't let her get too tired, mister. Sterling instructed his subordinate over the phone, worried. The retired soldier, holding his phone, looked up and saw the young couple sitting on the living room couch. Leo was shelling sunflower seeds for Claire. He fed her one, and she smiled, leaning in to give him a kiss as a reward. Mister, Joe replied. She's fine. The young mistress doesn't look tired at all. After 2 more days of training, Leo was really getting into the groove. He had adapted to the 2-hour stance training sessions. His limbs still ached afterward, but at least his legs weren't shaking as violently. His form was also starting to look more authentic. According to Mr. Joe, the basics were taking shape, so a new element was added to his training. Every evening, he would practice with a wooden dummy for half an hour. He would use the combat techniques he had just learned, further honing his skills and power. Leo had no prior experience, so Mr. Joe was constantly pointing out flaws in his technique. The main problem was a lack of ruthlessness. In simpler terms, he was missing a killer instinct. Eventually, an unsatisfied Mr. Joe offered a solution. Just imagine this wooden dummy is the person you hate the most, and just let them have it. Leo thought for a moment. He didn't really have anyone he particularly hated. Did Truck count? Probably not. Imagining himself sparring with a truck was a surefire way to get flattened, even for a grandmaster. Don't you have a girl you dislike? Mr. Joe suggested helpfully. As a former reconnaissance soldier, he was well aware of the little high school gossip involving Leo and Claire. Leo's eyes lit up. Sarah Lynn. But after a moment, he shook his head with a relaxed smile. Not really. That's all in the past. Who doesn't make mistakes and act foolishly as a kid? We were high school classmates, after all. If I ever see her again, I could still greet her with a smile. He felt quite proud of himself for saying that. This was the magnanimity of a mature, 30-something soul. The next second, a cool, melodic voice came from behind him. Oh, so some people can still smile when they see Sarah Lynn. Instantly, his scalp tingled and the hair on his neck stood on end. Without a moment's hesitation, Leo glared at the wooden dummy. Fuck you, Sarah Lynn. He unleashed an elbow strike, followed by a knee, and then a powerful shoulder strike, sending the wooden dummy trembling violently. The retired soldier, standing nearby, was visibly moved. Good. That's the killer instinct I'm talking about. Leo nodded humbly, pretending not to see the amused smirk his girlfriend was giving him from behind. He was sweating bullets. Killer instinct? No, there's a killer behind me. Time flew by, and the new year was fast approaching. One day, Claire received a call from Berkeley. On the other end, Mr. Sterling's voice was filled with guilt and apology as he explained that, for various reasons, he wouldn't be able to return to Northwood to celebrate the new year with her. The girl seemed to have expected this. There was no anger, no questioning his broken promise. She just gave a quiet and hung up. When she sat back down on the sofa, Leo asked what was wrong. Claire just explained it away, casually, as if she were used to her father breaking his promises. But Leo could tell his girlfriend was in a bad mood. Mr. Sterling was in a bad mood, too. With no one to talk to, he thought of his new little brother, the one he got along with so well. Over the phone, Charles Sterling didn't go into the details of his melancholy, only lamenting that his work was so demanding it was affecting what should have been a happy family life. Leo, having just learned about the situation with Claire and her father, could empathize. As they talked, they found they had a surprising amount in common. The Sterling Holdings chairman on the other end of the line was even more surprised and pleased. This little brother really did get him. A true confidant. Changing the subject, Mr. Sterling curiously asked about his little brother's love life. This perked Leo right up. It's going great, he said with a smile. I'm staying at her place right now. Charles Sterling was deeply impressed. Whoa, you got some moves, kid. 3rd chapter delivered. Please ask for more and send gifts by the way. I suddenly realize I might not finish this in 400 chapters. Gossip is human nature. Upon hearing there was a story, the Sterling Holdings chairman on the other end of the line temporarily forgot his own melancholy and urged him on. Details. Leo didn't hide much, giving his no-money-for-smokes big brother a brief rundown. He kept it simple, saying his girlfriend's father was often away on business and hadn't come home recently, so he was staying over to keep her company. Charles Sterling chuckled. Well, what a coincidence. You really lucked out with that opportunity. I mean, if her dad was home, he'd probably chase you out with a kitchen knife, right? Leo thought about it and disagreed. Probably not. My girlfriend said her dad seemed pretty happy when he found out we were dating. He's a lot more reasonable than you are, big brother. Mr. Sterling couldn't help but scoff. How could it be the same? His precious daughter was a celestial beauty, Of course, he had to be protective. This kid's girlfriend was named Bertha. Her dad was probably desperate to marry her off as soon as possible. Then, a wave of melancholy hit him again. Your girlfriend's father is in business too? You know, when you think about it, is making a little money really more important than family? If I were in her dad's shoes, I'd drop everything and go home to be with my daughter. Leo disagreed. It's not as simple as you think, big brother. Her father's business is pretty big. He can't just drop it. The Sterling Holdings chairman on the other end of the line chuckled. How big can it be? Bigger than my Sterling Holdings? Following the topic, Leo offered some well-meaning advice of his own. Big brother, why don't you take a break from your business and go be with your family? Charles sighed. It's not that easy. The business I'm running is the one that's truly massive. I can't just walk away. This time, it was Leo's turn to chuckle. How big could it be? Bigger than my future father-in-law's Sterling Holdings. The two brothers, on equal footing, both avoided telling the full truth for fear of scaring the other off. The topic was quickly dropped. After a bit more idle chatter, right before hanging up, Mr. Sterling, ever the instigator, gave his little brother an idea. Little bro, you're already at your future father-in-law's house. You can't leave empty-handed. You said her old man has some stuff. Grab something on your way out. It doesn't have to be valuable. Just think of it as a trophy. Leo laughed and went along with it, mentioning that his girlfriend was actually planning to pack him a whole sack of antique collectibles to take home. Charles was surprised. Your future father-in-law collects antiques, too? What a coincidence. Leo smiled. Probably just a hobby. They're all worthless fakes. Mr. Sterling understood, then said smugly, well, your big brother is different. When it comes to antiques, I'm a pro. The treasures in my collection are all authentic. Every single one is precious to me. Leo offered a word of praise, but also a warning. Then you'd better be careful, big brother. Don't let some punk kid make off with them. Charles was full of confidence. Don't worry, he won't get the chance. First, that punk and my daughter aren't even in the same place. Second, I have a trusted subordinate watching over things for me every day. Double insurance. At that same moment, in the driver's room, a certain retired soldier unexpectedly sneezed. He felt a bit puzzled. Who's thinking about me? He shook his head. Not important. Joe, trusted subordinate turned chief threat, scribe of sagas, master of earthquakes, picked up his pen again and began to write furiously in his intelligence log. Oh wait, he began to record furiously. Lately, life at the Sterling Villa in Coral Court had been focused on the couple's daily interactions and their training in the basement. They had neglected to contact their respective best friends. So, one day, the other young couple came looking for them. Holy shit, was Kevin Zhao's first exclamation as he walked into the Sterling Villa, his eyes wide as he took in the 20-foot ceilings of the living room. He then started darting around like a monkey, his mind blown by everything he saw. This TV, this sofa, this cabinet. Hey, why is the cabinet empty? Shouldn't it be full of priceless antiques or something? Tessa Yuan completely ignored her boyfriend's embarrassing display. She linked arms with Claire as they walked inside, chatting. So, what have you and your boy been up to? We haven't seen you in days. At her friend's question, Claire just smiled faintly. Nothing much. Just exercising at home, playing some little games. That one sentence immediately piqued Tessa's interest. As the former literature rep for their class, she was an expert at reading between the lines. Her eyes lit up. Exercising? Playing games? So you two have been getting up to some exciting stuff behind our backs. Claire shot her best friend an exasperated look. What are you thinking? It's just normal exercise. Her tone was calm and natural. Whether the games were normal games was a detail she conveniently omitted. Kevin wandered back over. Hey, class president, where's Leo? Claire smiled slightly. He's downstairs exercising. A few moments later, Claire led Kevin and Tessa down to the second-level basement. Kevin was once again stunned. Holy shit, this training hall is massive. Their gazes fell upon the center of the room, where a familiar figure was practicing with a wooden dummy under the guidance of a retired Special Forces soldier. His punches and blocks were solid and powerful, looking quite formidable, and his movements were accompanied by spirited shouts. Fuck you, Sarah Lynn. Kevin was confused. Tessa was confused. What the hell? Sarah Lynn's character was written out of the show ages ago. Why are they still dragging her out to beat her up? After Leo finished his training session, he walked over, wiping sweat with a towel, and greeted them. Kevin and Tessa had just witnessed his genuine workout and were both amazed. Damn, Leo, you're really going for it, huh? This training regimen is insane. Claire, standing beside them, said nonchalantly, I told him not to do it. but a certain someone is determined to get strong enough to protect his girlfriend. What can I do? I can't stop him. Others might not have picked up on the true meaning behind her casual tone, but as her best friend, the former literature rep shot her a look. All right, so this is how we're showing off now, is it? However, seeing Leo's impressive and handsome form during his training had given Tessa an idea. Exercising. It does seem to have its benefits, she mused, her gaze subconsciously shifting to her own boyfriend. Coincidentally, as if by some couple's intuition, Kevin turned to look at her at the same moment. How about? Tessa smiled, gratified. See, my boyfriend isn't so bad after all. The next second, Kevin spoke with sincere earnestness. You train a little too, babe? Then you can protect me when we go out. Young mister. Zhao paid a heavy price for his thoughtless words. After giving her boyfriend a thorough beating, a refreshed Tessa Yuan pulled Claire upstairs, leaving a bruised and swollen Kevin to be helped up by a sympathetic Leo. Oh, and Mr. Zhou was there too. The retired soldier watched the two young women go, a look of admiration on his face as he watched Tessa's retreating back. Now there's some real potential. With a bit of polishing in the military, she could be an elite female soldier. Kevin looked at Mr. Zhou with a pleading expression. Sir, you saw my girlfriend's combat skills. She doesn't need my protection. Can we just skip my training? Mr. Zhou's expression was calm and steady. Sorry, the young mistress just gave the order. I have to follow it. In other words, it was non-negotiable. Kevin's face fell. Unwilling to give up, he tried to cozy up to the soldier. Well, Mr. Zhou, maybe you could go easy on me? I mean, your mistress was my class president. I'm the one who made her and Leo's relationship happen. This was a masterclass in how to say the absolute wrong thing. He would have been better off not saying anything. The moment he did, the way the retired soldier looked at him changed completely. So you're the culprit. Thinking back on the increasingly difficult working conditions and mounting pressure he'd been under ever since the young mistress and Leo started their relationship in their senior year. Mr. Zhou's eyes began to gleam with a menacing light. All right, he said. I promise not to train you to death. Kevin was confused. Was it his imagination? Or had a black cloak just appeared around Mr. Zhou and a scythe in his hand? Had he just transformed into the Grim Reaper? At noon, Mrs. Phone came down to the basement to call the three men up for lunch. As she descended the stairs, she saw Leo kindly squatting down to offer water to Kevin, who was sprawled on the floor like a dead dog, while the retired soldier stood by, looking refreshed and vindicated. Is Kevin all right? Mrs. Fong asked with concern. Mr. Zhou was in high spirits. Don't worry, Mrs. Fong. I know how to hold back. Leo added with a smile. He's fine, Mrs. Fong. He glanced at his best friend and added objectively. He's only a little bit dead. Leo helped his friend upstairs with Mrs. Fong and Mr. Zhou following. He casually asked what Mrs. Fong had made for lunch. She replied with a smile. I heard Kevin and Tessa both like spicy food. I made Sichuan cuisine for lunch. Then she remembered something else. The young mistress and Tessa helped in the kitchen, too. At those words, Kevin, who had been on the verge of death a moment ago, was shocked back to life. Ignoring his aching body, he struggled to turn and run. My mom's having another baby. He was then forcibly escorted to the dining room by Leo and Mr. Zhou. But when Kevin resigned his fate, actually picked up his chopsticks and tasted the food, he was pleasantly surprised. The two dishes made by the class president and his own girlfriend were unexpectedly delicious. Leo helpfully explained, Mrs. Fong is a master chef. She helped them with these two dishes. Kevin turned to Mrs. Fong, his eyes filled with awe. Mrs. Fong, you're incredible. You managed to salvage whatever these two made. You must be a top-tier chef. The moment the words left his mouth, the temperature at the table dropped to freezing. Two icy glares shot in his direction. Kevin shivered, then looked up to meet the expressionless faces of Claire and Tessa. He turned his head with great difficulty, looking pleadingly at Leo and Mr. Zhou. Leo, Mr. Zhou. The other two completely ignored him, burying their heads in their food and eating furiously. This kid has a death wish. Just don't let us get caught in the crossfire. During their visit, Tessa and Kevin were completely won over by Mrs. Feng's cooking. Kevin, forgetting his aches and pains, enthusiastically tried to win her over. Auntie, are you looking to adopt a son? What do you think of me? I don't have many talents, but I can really eat. Mrs. Feng, with her usual warm and gentle smile, replied, If you like it, come by any time. I'll cook for you every day. That was all it took for Kevin and Tessa to decide. Since they had nothing else to do, they would come over to eat and hang out whenever they could. Claire had no objections. Her home in Northwood had been quiet and lonely for so many years. Now, it was finally starting to feel lively. It was something to be happy about. So, in the following days, the Sterling Villa had 2 new regular visitors. The 4 of them would happily eat Mrs. Feng's delicious meals, pile onto the sofa to watch movies, and play cards and games. Of course, the 2 boys' daily training sessions continued without fail. For Leo, having his best friend join him somehow made his own training feel less stressful. He wasn't sure why. It just seemed like Mr. Zhou was especially dedicated and enthusiastic when it came to training Kevin. As a result, poor Kevin was trained to within an inch of his life, his screams of agony echoing up 2 floors to the living room. Claire, sipping tea on the sofa, listened for a moment and then glanced at her best friend. "Your boyfriend sounds like he's about to shatter." Tessa calmly sipped her tea. "Is he? It's fine. We can patch him up. He'll still be usable." "Ooh, this tea is good. You should try some." Despite his complaints, Kevin had a resilient streak. Since he had started training with Leo, he wasn't about to quit halfway. So after a few days, his tenacity even surprised Mr. Zhou. This kid, he really does have a never-give-up attitude. But then again, was he this persistent when he was trying to set up the young mistress and Leo? The thought flashed through his mind, and the flicker of admiration he had just felt instantly vanished. "So you can endure, huh? Let's ramp up the intensity." That evening, after being trained into a dead dog state, Kevin crawled over to Leo, his voice weak and full of despair. "Leo, I've figured something out. Does Mr. Zhou have a grudge against me? I did the Sterling family a great service. I'm the hero who got you and the class president together." Leo was also puzzled. He thought for a moment and offered some helpful advice. "Why don't you mention your heroic deeds to him more often? Please ask for more and send a gift if all goes well. There'll be more tonight." Kevin thought Leo's advice was brilliant. Kevin took the advice. Kevin bravely challenged Mr. Earthquake Zhou. Kevin was utterly defeated. As young Mr. Zhou once again lay sprawled on the training room floor like a dead dog after another grueling session, the retired soldier was contentedly sipping Team Mrs. Feng had brought him. He savored the taste, feeling a bit perplexed. He'd never met a young man so eager to push his own buttons before. The kid was practically tap dancing on a minefield. Did he have no fear of death? After 2 more days of this hellish training, even Kevin's stance and form began to show some promise. But between the 2 of them, Leo was still the one progressing at an astonishing rate. Even Mr. Zhou was repeatedly amazed. He hadn't expected that under such intense training, Leo would never once complain. There was no need to even compare him to the constantly whining Kevin. He had been steadily increasing the intensity of Leo's training, tailoring it specifically to him. But no matter how much he pushed, Leo somehow managed to endure it all. Time and time again, he would be drenched in sweat, on the verge of collapse. Yet he would always manage to get back up and continue, completing every designated move with meticulous precision. At one point, Mr. Zhou couldn't help but ask Leo how he managed to persevere. Leo just wiped the sweat from his brow and smiled. "For every bit of hardship I endure now, I'll have a little more strength when I need it, and a little less regret." He then said, almost as a joke, "Back at the Dynasty Lounge, if you had arrived a little later, my only option would have been a fight for my life. And I might not have one." Mr. Zhou was silent for a moment, then said, "That was my failure. I should have been there sooner." But Leo shook his head. "It's not your fault, Mr. Zhou. I just don't like the feeling of putting all my hope in someone else. Your destiny should be in your own hands. The person you love should be protected with your own strength." Leo looked up at Mr. Zhou and smiled again. "Your mistress once asked me what I would do if the whole world was against us being together. I said, we'll run. She almost climbed through the phone to beat me to death for that." His tone was filled with lingering fear. The retired soldier was amused, easily imagining the young mistress's cold expression at that moment. But Leo's next words made him pause. Leo thought for a moment, then continued, "But what if we can't run? Then the only option is to fight. I'm not one to believe in fate. If I come up against some so-called destiny, I'll still fight back. The more skills I have, the more capital I have to fight with, right?" He said all this with a relaxed smile, but Mr. Zhou, listening, could feel the weight behind those words. The young man before him had a casual, carefree demeanor, yet his words struck him with a surprising force. There was a quiet power in his calm, like thunder rolling silently over a still lake. That demeanor, that determination. The last time he had seen in someone was in the Sterling Holdings chairman he had faithfully served for half his life. It was only at this moment, looking at the young man, that Mr. Zhou truly felt, for the first time, that his young mistress's judgment was impeccable. This was a person worthy of her complete trust and devotion. Taking a slow breath, the retired soldier didn't comment further on Leo's words. He just said with a steady expression, "Ready for another round?" Leo nodded. "Let's do it." Training required planning and moderation. You couldn't just work someone to death. After 2 more days, Leo's stance and basic combat skills were becoming solid, and Kevin was just about broken. The retired soldier announced a few days of rest. A new round of training would begin after the new year. Upon hearing the news, Kevin was so overjoyed he almost ran out of the villa to set off fireworks in the neighborhood. With training on hold, the group suddenly had a lot more free time. They planned to go out and experience the growing festive atmosphere in the small town of Northwood. But Kevin staunchly refused to walk. His legs were about to fall off from all the stance training. One more step, and he risked needing an amputation. There was, however, another option. "We could drive around," Tessa suggested. She and Kevin had taken driving lessons on weekends during their first semester and had just gotten their licenses. Kevin's spirits lifted. "Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm a pro driver now." Claire readily agreed. The Maybach was parked right in the villa's front yard. The 4 of them said goodbye to Mr. Joe and Mrs. Fong and got into the car, with Tess at the wheel. Surprisingly, for a new driver, her skills were quite good. Her driving was a little hesitant but smooth enough. After a couple of practice laps around the neighborhood, Tessa got the hang of it, marveling at how different the Maybach felt from the beat-up cars at the driving school. The handling was incredible. "You and Leo should learn to drive too," she suggested to her best friend. "It's an essential skill you should learn sooner rather than later." Kevin nodded enthusiastically. "Totally. Driving around in this Maybach would be so cool. If you guys don't know how, my girl and I can teach you." Just then, they reached a small, empty lot at the back of Coral Court. Claire smiled slightly. "I don't need lessons. I'm pretty decent behind the wheel." Tessa and Kevin were skeptical. They got out of the car and watched nervously as she got into the driver's seat. She closed the door, started the engine. The Maybach let out a low growl. To Kevin and Tessa's utter astonishment, Claire expertly maneuvered the car around the small lot, moving like a nimble butterfly, as graceful as a galloping horse. She even finished with a drift, coming to a precise, steady stop right in front of them. Even Leo was a little impressed. Bertha Sue's driving skills were something else. Kevin and Tessa were practically dumbfounded. Kevin never thought he'd live to see the day a car looked down on him. Claire and Tessa burst out laughing. All Kevin could do was mumble under his breath. "So what if he can start it? It's the driving that counts." The 3 of them assumed Leo was just testing the ignition, but to their surprise, he then proceeded to showcase his own driving skills. He'd been an experienced driver in his past life, but unlike Claire's flashy, wild style, his handling of the Maybach was steady and reassuring. After a couple of laps around the empty lot, the Maybach came to a smooth stop in front of the others. Leo turned off the engine and got out, smiling at them. "Not bad. It's a nice car." This time, it was Claire who was a little surprised. Her beautiful eyes fixed on her boyfriend. "When did you learn?" Leo gave a similarly casual reply. "A long time ago. It was from his past life, after all." Claire just said, "Oh," not pressing further, though she felt a tinge of disappointment. She had been hoping that if Leo Hammer didn't know how to drive, she could teach him herself. The hands-on kind of teaching. Tessa was also amazed. "Wow, that's pretty good. You could probably skip driving school and go straight for the test." Only Kevin was still grumbling under his breath. "He drives like some old government official. So boring." Tessa shot her boyfriend an exasperated look. "This is a Maybach. You have to be careful with it. Wouldn't you be devastated if you scratched it?" Kevin pouted and started kicking a pebble. He accidentally sent it flying, and it bounced off the side of the Maybach. Kevin's heart nearly stopped. He lunged toward the car, anxiously inspecting the spot, and only breathed a sigh of relief when he confirmed there was no damage. He glanced around and saw that the other 3 hadn't noticed. He leaned in close to the Maybach and whispered conspiratorially, "Listen, Bach, this is between you, me, and the sky. Don't tell anyone. I'll fill you up with some premium gas later, and we'll call it even." The Maybach remained unimpressed. Since they didn't have their licenses yet, Leo and Claire only took the Maybach for a quick spin in the empty lot behind Coral Court. Then they handed the keys back to Tessa. The 4 of them drove out of the neighborhood to find something to eat. "How about some beef stir-fry?" Kevin suggested from inside the car. The other 3's eyes lit up, and the suggestion was quickly approved. The black Maybach cruised smoothly along the river walk that ran through Northwood, and soon they arrived at their destination, a street-side shop called Yang Stir Fry. When the 4 of them got out of the Maybach, they drew the attention of the other customers and even the owner. The sight of the luxury car was enough to turn heads. After all, There weren't many like it in a small town like Northwood. The young men and women who emerged from it were also exceptionally good-looking and stylish. The customers' eyes scanned from Claire to Leo, to Tessa, and finally to Kevin, and they couldn't help but admire them. So youthful and easy on the eyes. A beauty, a handsome guy, another beauty, and a human. Yang's Stir Fry was an old, well-loved spot for the students in Northwood. Leo and his friends had been here many times in high school. They greeted the owner like old friends, and he welcomed them warmly. "What can I get for you two lovely ladies?" Claire and Tessa each ordered a clay pot of spicy noodles. The owner cheerfully took their order, then turned to Leo. "And for you, handsome?" Leo smiled and ordered the signature onion beef stir-fry with a side of crispy chicken frames. Finally, it was Kevin's turn. The owner glanced at him and asked politely, "And what will this guest be having?" Kevin was baffled. "Wait, why am I just this guest?" After ordering, they found a table. Soon, the owner brought over the steaming stir-fry, noodle pots, and chicken. These were local specialties you could only find in Northwood. Once you went off to college, no matter how much you craved them, you couldn't get a single bite. There was nothing particularly special about them, but they had the authentic taste of home. The four of them dug in without hesitation, eating with gusto. Soon, some middle and high school students, fresh out of class, came into the shop. They saw Leo's group sitting in the corner, their stylish clothes and striking looks making them stand out, and couldn't help but stare in awe. They saw Leo and Claire affectionately feeding each other. Wow, a handsome guy and a beautiful girl. Then they saw Kevin and Tessa next to them, with Kevin just as attentively putting food on Tessa's plate. Wow, a simp chasing a goddess. Fortunately, the four of them were oblivious to the other students' thoughts. The two couples ate and chatted happily. The conversation turned to the upcoming New Year's Eve, and Tessa asked her best friend, "Claire, what are your plans for this year? If your dad isn't coming back, why don't you come to my place?" Claire glanced at Leo beside her and smiled. "It's okay. I have somewhere to go." The Lunar New Year drew closer. On the 29th day of the last lunar month, at the Sterling Villa in Coral Court, Claire gave Mrs. Foam and Mr. Zhou red envelopes with their holiday bonuses and gave them time off to go home and celebrate with their own families. Then, she brazenly followed Leo back to his house. Leo's parents had already heard that their in-law wouldn't be returning to Northwood for the holiday. Susan Wallace was indignant, complaining about her counterpart who ran some measly little business, and immediately insisted that Claire come stay with them for the celebration. Before leaving the Sterling Villa, Leo helped his girlfriend pack up her things. Her future father-in-law's worthless fake collectibles alone filled an entire sack. Claire had also prepared New Year's gifts for both of Leo's parents. With Mr. Zhou and Mrs. Foam gone, the manual labor fell to Leo. He was weighed down by all the bags and packages, and if it weren't for his recent physical training, he wouldn't have been able to manage. He tried to convince her to bring less, but she shot down every suggestion. "No, this one is for Dad. Those 2 bags of cosmetics are for Mom. And these 2 bags have my daily essentials." Leo was exasperated. He held up another bag. "What about this one? This one's definitely not necessary, right? We can leave it." The girl glanced at it, paused for a moment, then said casually, "That's just some stockings." Leo was silent. Then, with a calm, unchanged expression, he clutched the bag tightly to his chest. "Right? This one is useful. We should bring it." They returned to the Wallace house, carrying bags of all sizes. When presented with the various cosmetics and small gift from her future daughter-in-law, Susan chided Claire for being too polite and wasting her money, but she couldn't stop the smile from spreading across her face as she examined each item lovingly. Beside them, Robert curiously and carefully opened the large woven bag on the floor. He peeked inside and was immediately baffled. What is all this?" Leo, who was taking the various antiques out of the bag, explained, "This is a Famille Rose 9 deer vase. This is a little Pichot statue." "It's okay, Dad. They're all fakes." Robert shot his son an indignant look. "You think I don't know they're fakes? When it comes to collecting and appraising antiques, your old man is a pro." He picked up a few of the small pieces, examining them closely and clicking his tongue in amazement. "They're surprisingly realistic. Don't tell me Claire's dad bought these thinking they were real? He must have lost a fortune." Being the kind-hearted man he was, Robert's concern immediately flared up. "I'll have to find a chance to chat with Charles. It's not easy for him running a small business. He can't get scammed by these antique hustlers. From now on, I'll be his expert eye." Claire, who had been whispering affectionately with Susan, turned and smiled. "Oh, he has plenty more at home. I'll have Leo bring them over sometime, and you can appraise all of them, Dad." With that one simple sentence, The entire antique collection of a certain Sterling Holdings chairman was doomed to be declared worthless. Robert waved his hands frantically. No, no. Even if they're fakes, they're still treasures your father worked hard to collect. A gentleman doesn't take what another man loves. Claire's tone was light and casual. It's fine. This is just a small part of his collection in Northwood. The bulk of it is in Portland. After a moment's thought, a contemplative look appeared on her face. It seems like a waste to just let all that stuff in Portland sit there collecting dust. At that exact moment, in a luxurious high-rise apartment in the Concord, Unit 1, in Portland, a certain chairman of Sterling Holdings, who was busy at his desk processing documents, suddenly sneezed. He looked around, puzzled. Why do I suddenly feel a chill down my spine? New Year's was just around the corner. Inside the Wallace home, Susan was busy with the annual deep clean, a family tradition to welcome the new year. As the Wallace family's soon-to-be daughter-in-law, Claire naturally jumped in to help, tackling all sorts of household chores alongside Susan. That left the two men, Robert and Leo. They exchanged a look, rolled up their sleeves, and headed into the kitchen. By the time the mother-daughter duo had finished cleaning the living room and hanging new curtains, they sat down at the dining table to find a feast already laid out. The four of them ate a warm, happy lunch, talking and laughing. Susan was already planning the menu for New Year's Eve, rattling off a list of dishes before turning to the two men. You can handle it, right? Robert and Leo immediately puffed out their chests and nodded vigorously. No problem. Mission accepted. In the afternoon, the deep clean continued, with Leo and his father joining in. It took the entire day, but the Wallace home was left sparkling, much to Susan's satisfaction. That night, Leo was once again relegated to the living room sofa. But for him, this was no longer a problem. In the dead of night, a phone screen lit up silently. A text message from a girl in the bedroom arrived like a practiced secret code. Come? Leo leaped up with practiced ease, tiptoeing stealthily back to his own bedroom door, his heart full of anticipation. He reached for the handle. And then, the familiar doorknob wouldn't turn. The familiar door was locked from the inside. Leo, after paying the price of a few more whispered pleas of my dearest wife and master, the door finally opened. He slipped inside, wasted no time jumping onto the bed, and dove under the covers, which were filled with the intoxicating scent of Claire. When Claire returned to the bed, slipping under the covers beside him, their eyes met. The atmosphere was charged, gradually heating up. Leo's mind began to race, planning to relive their last wonderful experience. My lady, he began, but was cut short by a familiar metallic click. The handsome young man stared in stunned disbelief at his right hand, which was now cuffed to the nightstand. In the moonlight, the girl's face was bewitching, her lips curved into a playful, teasing smile. I'm sorry, she purred. You can call me Officer Sterling. His plan to enlist the help of a hero had failed. He had been arrested. The next morning, New Year's Eve, they sat down for breakfast. Susan noticed her son constantly flexing his right wrist. What's wrong with you? Leo immediately sat up straight, his expression a mask of righteous integrity. Nothing. I just slept on it funny. My hand's a little sore. He lied without blinking, shooting a glance at his beautiful girlfriend across the table. A tiny, cartoon version of himself was grinding its teeth in frustration. I let my guard down. Otherwise, it would have been Bertha Sue with the sore wrist. Thankfully, his parents didn't notice anything unusual. After breakfast, Robert prepared to head to the old factory for a final check-in, while Susan needed to go to the bakery to clear out inventory and check the books. Before leaving, Susan remembered something. Oh, that's right. That girl Anna came by the Skyview Pavilion that one time after coming home for winter break. How come she hasn't stopped by the house? In previous years, Anna, who was practically a second daughter to them, would always stay at their house for a while during her breaks. But this winter break was more than halfway over, and there had been no sign of her. Susan was worried, so before heading out, she instructed her son, give Anna a call. If her parents aren't cooking, have her come over for dinner. We'll celebrate New Year's Eve together. The more, the merrier. Leo nodded in agreement. After his parents left, Leo sat down on the living room sofa and dialed Anna's number. The first call went unanswered. He tried again. Still no response. Claire emerged from the bedroom. Annie Cakes isn't picking up? Leo nodded, but a slight frown creased his brow as if he'd just realized something. He stood up from the sofa. I'm going to go check on her. Hearing this, Claire seemed to realize the same thing. A sharp, knowing look flashed in her eyes. I'll go with you. It was already New Year's Eve. The festive atmosphere in Northwood was getting stronger. When Leo and Claire went out, the streets were bustling with people doing last-minute shopping, their faces radiating holiday cheer. The sound of firecrackers and fireworks echoed throughout the small town. Anna lived in a newer development called Harmony Gardens. The location and environment of the complex were quite nice. When Leo and Claire entered, they were stopped by a diligent security guard, who only let them pass after they provided the building number they were visiting. However, when they arrived in front of Building 12, Leo stood at the entrance stumped. Even in his past life, he had rarely visited his aunt's home, and now, with the memories of a lifetime separating him, he had completely forgotten Anna's specific floor and apartment number. His calls went unanswered. He was at a loss. Sensing his dilemma, Claire thought for a moment and said, "It should be 609. Leo was taken aback, instinctively looking at his girlfriend. She just smiled faintly. "We were chatting before." She mentioned it. With a specific address, they didn't hesitate any longer. They entered the building and took the elevator up. Exiting on the 6th floor, they walked down the hall and soon arrived at apartment 609. Through the heavy door, they could faintly hear the sounds of shouting and arguing inside. Leo and Claire exchanged a look, and he knocked on the door. Footsteps approached from within. With a click, the door opened. The sounds of arguing instantly became clearer. A middle-aged man and woman in a heated fight. Amidst this chaotic backdrop, Anna appeared at the door. She was dressed casually in a pale yellow sweater and a pleated skirt. Black over-the-knee socks hugged her long, shapely calves, and she wore a pair of soft slippers. Her smooth black hair fell loosely over her shoulders, her bright and elegant demeanor unchanged. The moment she saw them, Anna was slightly surprised, but her expression quickly returned to normal. "What are you guys doing here?" she asked with a smile. Her tone was casual and natural, as if she were completely oblivious to the loud argument behind her, offering no explanation. Just then, the fight inside escalated. The woman's voice, tinged with tears, cried out, "I gave you everything, and you're still sneaking around with that woman. Do you have any conscience at all?" Then came a man's cold laugh. "She can give me a son, a real son, and you." The woman's voice shot up, sharp and piercing. "Anna is your daughter, too." The man's voice rose to match hers. "A daughter is worthless. Besides, she's just something you found. You really think I give a damn about her?" The atmosphere in the doorway suddenly fell silent. Leo took a shallow breath and, pretending he hadn't heard a thing, said nonchalantly, "We didn't answer your phone. My mom wants you to come over for New Year's Eve dinner. If you're free, we can go now." Anna's expression didn't change. She nodded cheerfully. "Sure." She turned slightly and called back into the apartment with a bright smile. "Dad, Mom, I'm going to my uncle's for dinner. I won't be back tonight." The argument inside didn't pause for a second. It seemed the couple who were supposed to be her parents didn't care in the slightest whether she stayed or left. And she, in turn, didn't seem to care either. After making her obligatory announcement, she turned back to Leo and Claire with a radiant smile. "Let's go." She walked to the door to change her shoes. Claire glanced inside. Then her eyes fell back on Anna. "Do you need to pack anything?" she asked softly. Anna, having changed her shoes, stood up and replied with a completely unconcerned smile. "There's nothing to bring. Just me is enough." As she spoke, she stepped outside and casually pulled the door shut, as if sealing the furious argument and the man and woman fighting outside of her world. The elevator ride down was silent. None of them spoke. But when they stepped out of the building and reached the entrance of the complex, Anna stopped. She turned to Leo and Claire and smiled again. "I've been thinking. You two go on back. I don't think I'll come after all." Leo was stunned. "What do you mean?" Anna was still smiling, but this time her smile held a hint of detachment. "It's nothing. It's New Year's Eve. A family should be happy together. If I go, I'll just bring my bad luck and ruin the mood. Don't worry about me. I'll just find a hotel to crash at." Leo was flabbergasted, then his brow furrowed. For the first time ever, his voice carried a trace of anger as he looked at her. "Anna, what the hell are you talking about? You're coming with me." For Anna, it was likely the first time he had ever called her by her full name with such a tone and expression. She, too, was taken aback. Then she defiantly lifted her chin to meet his gaze. The moment hung, frozen. In the next instant, Claire broke the tension. She reached out and gently took her friend's hand. Anna instinctively tried to pull away, but found the grip was soft yet unyieldingly firm. She turned to look at Claire in surprise. Claire simply smiled at her. "Don't use your own wounds as a weapon against the people who care about you." The words struck a chord deep within Anna. She met Claire's gaze again. The girl's eyes were as clear as a mirror, soft and warm. "When you're shown kindness," Claire said, gently squeezing her hand as if to comfort and encourage her, "you can try putting away your thorns. Let's go." Staring at Claire, Anna bit her lip and finally she gave a small nod. Okay. When the three of them got home, Robert and Susan had already returned. Seeing their goddaughter, the two of them were overjoyed, dropping what they were doing and rushing over to fuss over her. Susan happily pulled Anna to the sofa to chat, with Claire smilingly joining them. Leo, meanwhile, pulled his father aside into the kitchen and quietly explained the situation. On New Year's Eve, the Wallace family dinner table nearly erupted into a full-on brawl. The signature husband and wife tag team of Susan Wallace and Robert Wallace was in full effect. Of course, it was all playful teasing, nothing serious. But the light-hearted chaos was enough to completely wash away the slightly tense and oppressive atmosphere that had settled over the table earlier that evening. Toward the end of the meal, Robert went to the storage room and pulled out a bottle of red wine. He returned to the table, his face flushed with pride, and announced that it was a fine French wine, a gift from his old boss at the factory who had been promoted and moved away. It was so valuable that he never had the heart to open it, but tonight was a special occasion. Claire's ears immediately perked up. Doesn't our villa have a cellar full of this stuff? As of today, Charles Sterling can officially stop liking wine. Beside her, Anna chimed in with a smile. If you like red wine, Dad, I can buy you a couple of bottles and have them shipped from Portland. Robert waved his hands dismissively. I can't let you spend your money. You save it. Take care of yourself at school. Eat well. Your dad has a secret stash. With that last sentence, Robert Wallace threw his hands out with a flourish, looking positively heroic. The next second, a chill ran down his spine. Susan's voice drifted over, eerily calm. You have a secret stash? In an instant, Robert's expression changed. He let out a hearty laugh. Haha, I was just kidding. Where'd I get something like that? He then turned to Leo and lectured him righteously. Son, remember this. It's a Wallace family tradition. The men of this family do not keep secret stashes. Everything gets handed over. After delivering this passionate speech to his son, Robert turned to his wife, his face a mask of sincerity. Honey, am I right or am I right? Susan nodded with satisfaction. Yes, that's about right. Robert glanced cautiously at his wife's right hand. So, maybe you could put the knife down now. After the satisfying meal, the two girls followed Susan into the kitchen to wash the dishes. Leo and Robert, the two master chefs of the evening, finally had a moment to relax. The father and son chatted casually. Robert glanced at his wife's back in the kitchen, then leaned in conspiratorially toward his son, lowering his voice. Hey kid, you got a secret stash. Leo immediately grew wary. Not me. Robert's face turned righteous. Good. I was just testing you. A Wallace family tradition, you know. We can't have any of that secret stash nonsense. Then, not giving up, he lowered his voice again. You sure? Leo shot him a sidelong glance. Even if I did, I wouldn't lend it to you. Business is business, even between father and son. He'd worked hard for his savings, and not even his own dad was going to trick him out of it. By the time the women finished in the kitchen, it was nearly 8 o'clock. Susan glanced at the wall clock and gasped. Oh, the New Year's Eve special is about to start. She quickly herded the kids onto the living room sofa, turned on the TV, and settled in, full of excitement. This was still the New Year's Eve of 2008. Compared to the information-saturated internet-era years later, the holiday still held a traditional charm. A family could still sit together in front of the TV, watch a special, laugh at the comedians, and memorize all the catchphrases. This year, a legendary comedian was still the main event, the anchor of the show. A sketch about an Olympic torchbearer hyped up the upcoming Beijing Olympics. This year, a certain pop king made his second appearance on the show, and his song Blue and White Porcelain would become a national sensation. This year, catastrophic snowstorms had ravaged the South. On the broadcast, hosts and celebrities came together to recite a poem, Warmth 2008, raising money for their fellow citizens in the disaster areas. This year, sitting on the sofa in his living room, watching the New Year's Eve special unfold, Leo felt a momentary daze. It was as if memories from his past life were resurfacing, merging with the scene before him. Unlike his past life, where his mother faced unemployment and he had failed his college entrance exams, casting a heavy shadow that made the three of them watch the special in silence. This time, he was surrounded by the cheerful chatter of his parents, his cousin, and the girl he loved. It was so warm, so perfect, it almost felt unreal. Just then, he felt a warm touch in his right palm. He turned instinctively and saw that the girl beside him had quietly taken his hand. She turned to look at him, their eyes meeting. She smiled, her gaze warm and gentle. Leo smiled back. This isn't a dream. This is real. This is perfect. To be reborn into this life. It was truly worth it. As midnight approached, Robert and Susan, unable to stay up any longer, went to bed, leaving Leo, Claire, and Anna in the living room. Leo suggested they go downstairs and buy some fireworks to celebrate the holiday. The two girls readily agreed. The three of them soon went downstairs and easily bought a small assortment of fireworks from a nearby convenience store, sparklers, fountains, and other handheld novelties. It cost them all of $5 or $6. They went back up, heading to the rooftop of the apartment building. The girls lit their sparklers, which hissed and sputtered, casting brilliant, dancing light that drew gasps and laughter from both Claire and Anna. Leo set up a larger firework, and with Claire and Anna shouting warnings, he lit the fuse and quickly backed away. The fuse burned down. With a loud whoosh, a volley of fireworks shot into the sky, exploding into beautiful, blooming clouds of light against the dark canvas of night. The silver fountain was also lit, spewing a shower of sparks that flowed like a river of light. Accompanied by the sparklers waving in the hands of the two beautiful girls, the rooftop filled with ceaseless laughter, a scene as beautiful as a dream. Claire went to get another firework. By the rooftop railing, Leo and Anna stood side by side. Anna tilted her head back, gazing at the colorful explosions in the sky, a genuine, radiant smile on her face for the first time. Leo turned his head slightly to look at her. From now on, cry when you want to cry, and laugh only when you want to laugh. Don't hold it in when you're hurting, and don't force yourself to be okay when you're not. Even if the sky falls, you've still got your big brother. Anna froze, looking up at him. Leo paused, then a small smile touched his lips. And another thing, don't be so insecure. Stop worrying about who I'd save first if you fell in the water. If you, my little Annie cakes, fall in, it doesn't matter who else is there. Your big brother will never give up on you. Tonight, the Wallace household had one more guest. Robert and Susan had already made the arrangements. Anna and Claire would share a room. As for the so-called eldest son of the Wallace family, his accommodations remained unchanged. He was still sleeping on the living room sofa. However, while it seemed like nothing had changed, everything had changed. Before, Leo could sneak back into his room after his parents were asleep, crawl into bed with Bertha Sue, and even attempt to request the hero's assistance. Even if the hero had turned into an officer of the law, and even if he had to sneak back to the sofa before his parents woke up, at least he could spend the night with his soft, fragrant girlfriend. But now, with the arrival of Annie Cakes, even that small perk had been ruthlessly snatched away. What was most infuriating was that Annie Cakes was gloating about it. Before heading into the room, she taunted him, flexing her metaphorical muscles. "Ooh, I get to sleep with my sister-in-law's soft, warm body tonight. It's so nice. Hey, Leo Pig, how come you're not sleeping with us? Oh, right, I forgot. Mom has a butcher knife. Ha ha ha." Watching Anna's triumphant retreat, a vein throbbed on Leo's forehead. "I take back every single nice thing I said on the rooftop. If that girl falls in the water, I'll be the first one to throw a rock at her." Claire, however, could sense her boyfriend's frustration. She walked over, took his hand, and gave it a gentle squeeze as a form of comfort. "All right now, why are you getting jealous of your own cousin?" Leo ground his teeth. "Some cousin she is. She's worse than Sarah Lynn." That one sentence made Claire's eyebrows shoot up. The temperature in the room dropped a few degrees as a murderous aura began to rise. Leo instantly realized his mistake and scrambled to correct himself. No, that's not what I meant. I meant fuck Sarah Lynn." Claire's expression softened into satisfaction. She reached out and ruffled his hair. "Good boy. Sleep well tonight." Leo sighed. "I'll try." Seeing his dejected look, Claire paused, then seemed to make a decision. "How about I leave you something? To keep you company?" Leo looked at her, confused, a question mark appearing above his head. "Something? What could it be?" Annie Cakes had already snatched the pink Bertha Sue teddy bear, claiming it was cute, and she wanted to hug it to sleep. And he, Leo Wallace, a proud and dignified man, had no habit of sleeping with stuffed animals. The next second, Claire discreetly produced an object from somewhere. It was long, thin, and translucent. Black, made of silk. Leo. The girl looked at him and tilted her head slightly. "Will this do?" A rush of blood nearly sent a geyser out of his nose. His voice came out dry. Is it one you've worn?" His question, in turn, made Claire blush. She shot him an annoyed look. "It's new. I brought it with me. What is wrong with your brain?" Leo's dawning realization was immediately followed by disappointment. "Oh, it's new." Claire looked at him, exasperated, and made a show of taking it back. "Well, if you don't want it." Leo snatched the long, silky companion object from her hand. I want it. Although I, Leo Wallace, am no pervert, I'll graciously accept this out of the kindness of your heart, Bertha Sue. He spoke with righteous dignity, but his hands moved with zero hesitation, quickly stuffing the companion object into his pocket. Claire didn't know whether to laugh or get angry. She glanced at him. All right, now go to sleep. Leo nodded. Okay, you going to bed too. Good night. But the girl raised an eyebrow. Good night isn't something you say. Before Leo could react, she stood on her tiptoes and her soft lips pressed against his. A long moment passed before they separated. Claire smiled at him, her eyes shimmering with a captivating charm. That's how you say good night. Then, with her hands behind her back, she turned and gracefully skipped away, leaving him with only the view of her enchanting silhouette. Left behind, Leo watched her go, still savoring the taste of her surprise attack, his heart fluttering. That vixen, she's getting better and better at this. Though he claimed he wouldn't be able to sleep, the moment he lay down on the sofa with his companion object, he was out like a light. In the adjacent bedroom, however, the two girls were wide awake. After washing up, the new sisters-in-law lay in bed, chatting excitedly under the covers. They didn't search for topics. They just talked about whatever came to mind. But through this aimless conversation, Anna was surprised to discover that on matters both big and small, she and her new sister-in-law were surprisingly in sync. It was as if Claire knew her personality, her temperament, and even her preferences like the back of her hand. As they talked, Anna even started to suspect, is this Claire, sterling person, actually into me? Is being with Leo Pig just a cover? Is her real goal to get close to me, Anna? Whoa, that's way too scandalous. Annie Cakes, am a straight woman. And yet, as that righteous thought crossed her mind, she caught the faint, lovely scent wafting from the girl beside her and felt the soft body gently pressed against hers. Even Anna, a beauty in her own right, felt her resolve waver, her Tao heart nearly crumbling just like a certain someone else's. An idea began to form in her mind. If it's her, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. The night deepened. In the bedroom, the two girls were deep in conversation. Before they knew it, their throats were dry. They decided to get up and quietly sneak out to the kitchen for some water. Crossing the living room, Claire filled a pitcher and was turning to leave the kitchen with 2 glasses when she saw Anna making frantic gestures, pointing toward the sofa. Claire followed her gaze. On the sofa, Leo was fast asleep, his mouth hanging wide open. The sight made both girls stifle a giggle. Forgetting their water, they tiptoed closer and sat side by side on the arm of the sofa, thoroughly enjoying the spectacle of his ridiculous sleeping face. They even took out their phones, snapping pictures and selfies with him, flashing peace signs for posterity. And so, deep in his dreams, a certain handsome young man unknowingly became a photo prop and a tourist attraction, mercilessly used for their entertainment. When the two girls were finally satisfied with their photo shoot, Anna put her phone down. She sat there quietly, watching the still unaware boy sleeping soundly on the sofa. Did you know, she said softly, that Leo Pig and I aren't actually related by blood? The night was cool as water. The pale moonlight streamed silently through the window, spilling onto the sofa and floor of the Wallace living room. The air was crisp and quiet, making Anna's softly spoken words seem especially clear. Sitting beside her, Claire's expression remained calm. She simply nodded and hummed in acknowledgement. There was no surprise, no shock, because in her past life, in this very house, during a late-night drinking session with her friend, she had heard her say the exact same thing. She even knew what was coming next. As expected, Anna, paying no mind to Claire's reaction, continued to gaze at the sleeping Leo, speaking as if to herself. So, I had a secret crush on him when we were kids. I always dreamed that one day I could be his girlfriend. Back then, I was confident that no girl who came into his life could ever be better or more outstanding than me. Here, Anna paused, glancing at Claire and pouting slightly. You don't count. Claire smiled, but said nothing, content to be a listener. Anna looked back at Leo, pressing her lips together. A complex emotion flickered across her beautiful face. But I knew. He only ever saw me as a little sister. And as I got older, I realized that I wasn't really in love with him, either. Not in that way. I just loved how gentle he was with me. Loved the feeling of living in this home. So I desperately tried to find any way I could have truly become a part of this little family. Claire looked at Anna, her voice gentle, not a hint of anger in it. And now, Anna looked at the sleeping Leo, then her gaze swept around the familiar, cozy living room. A smile touched her lips, one of both freedom and relief. Now, I realized I was too attached to the idea. Being his sister is great. I get just as much care and attention. I don't have to rack my brain trying to figure out how to fit in, because I was already a part of this family all along. Everyone here genuinely cares about me and wants me to be happy. So, she paused again, her tone becoming earnest and solemn. I want them to be happy too. In the quiet, moonlit living room, Anna looked at Leo, a rare warmth in her eyes. Leo Pig is a very gentle and kind person. When my parents fought when I was little, I'd run away from home. When no one could find me, he would search everywhere, finally dragging me home, out of breath and covered in sweat. We'd pass the convenience store, and even though he treasured his allowance, he'd spend his last $2 on a slushie for me. He'd be swallowing his own drool, but he'd put on his big brother act and say he wasn't thirsty. I skipped a grade in 5th grade. When the kids at school found out about my family situation, they started gossiping. He was a grade below me back then, not even that tall. But the moment he heard I was being bullied, he marched right into my classroom alone and warned the boys, who were all a head taller than him, that if they ever dared to bully his sister again, he wouldn't be so nice. He ended up getting beaten to a pulp. I helped him to the nurse's office, crying as I watched the nurse clean his wounds. He was wincing in pain, but pretended it was nothing, vowing that if anyone bullied me again, he'd be back. Recalling the past, Anna couldn't help but smile, her eyes glistening. She turned to Claire. "Tell me, isn't he a total idiot?" Claire nodded softly. Her gaze drifted to the boy sleeping on the sofa, her eyes overflowing with the same tenderness. "Yeah, he's always been that foolish. Foolish enough to unconditionally care for a sister who wasn't his blood, to shoulder the responsibility of a brother. Foolish enough to face a knife-wielding criminal on a train without a second thought. Foolish enough that on that rainy night in her past life, faced with a speeding truck, he had sacrificed his life for her without a moment's hesitation. So foolish, but it was a foolishness that made your heart ache, that made you fall in love. His kindness and gentleness weren't selective. It was as if they could effortlessly melt the ice around the hearts of girls like her, like Anna, making them feel warm themselves. Anyway, Anna said, looking back at Claire, "I'm giving him to you now." Claire's eyebrows arched in a playful, questioning manner. That one small sound was enough to make the undisputed campus queen of East Bay Financial, the fearless Annie Cakes, falter. She suddenly looked awkward. "That's not important. The point is, he's yours now." So, the girl's tone became serious again. "Treat him well, don't let him go, and be happy with him for a long, long time." Claire smiled again. She reached out, took Leo's hand in hers, and squeezed it gently. "Don't worry. This lifetime, I've chosen him. Not even God himself could take me away from him again." The atmosphere in the living room was warm and peaceful, until Anna's gaze happened to fall on Leo's other hand. She noticed something strange. "Huh," she murmured. As she got a clearer look at the long, black, silky object in his hand, Anna gasped. She whipped her head around to face her sister-in-law. "Do you know about this?" For a rare moment, Claire's composure faltered. She quickly regained it and said calmly, "Of course not." Anna's expression changed. "That pig has gotten bold. How dare he do something like this?" Claire shot a glance at the sleeping boy, decisively selling out her teammate without a second's hesitation. "I know. Last time, he was staring at my feet. A leopard can't change its spots." On the morning of New Year's Day, Leo woke up on the living room sofa, stretching and yawning. He pushed open the window, and the deafening sound of fireworks and firecrackers exploded in the distance, the thick smell of gunpowder instantly waking him up completely. Before breakfast, Leo, Claire, and Anna formally wished Robert and Susan a Happy New Year. With his girlfriend right there, her eyes pleading and apologetic, Leo could only relent. He nodded, his face a mask of sincerity. "Yes, it was me. I took it secretly." Anna slammed her hand on the arm of the sofa, righteously indignant. So you finally admit it. Tell me, why would you do such a thing?" Leo's own face was dark. Can you give me some time to think of a reason?" In the end, he took the fall. Taking the blame for his girlfriend was no easy task. His magnificent public image was in ruins. Annie Cakes, however, was thoroughly satisfied with her timely police work. She turned to Claire, puffing out her chest. "Sister-in-law, you be careful from now on. Don't let this guy get any ideas. If he ever tries anything funny again, you tell me. I'll get justice for you." With that, she turned on her heel, proud and victorious, and went to enjoy the snacks her aunt and uncle had prepared. Leo and Claire were left behind, staring at each other. Feeling a bit guilty under his mournful gaze, Claire squeezed his hand comfortingly. "I'll make it up to you next time." The words instantly revived him. "How will you make it up to me?" "I'm telling you, Bertha Sue, Leo Wallace, can't be bought off with just a few more pairs of stockings. The girl's expression was serene. Don't worry. That's not what I was talking about. The man who was so righteous a second ago was instantly disappointed. Oh, it's really not. Claire pressed her lips together, leaned in close, and whispered something in his ear. Redacted for decency's sake, but Leo heard it loud and clear. His eyes widened. Really? He looked at her, his face a picture of delighted anticipation. Claire had already pulled back, a faint blush on her cheeks. She shot him a slightly annoyed look. Not now. We'll talk about it later. And it depends on your performance. But Leo was already over the moon, nodding vigorously. No problem. Rest assured, ma'am. I guarantee an outstanding performance. It was a Northwood custom not to visit relatives for the first 3 days of the new year. Robert and Susan went out to visit colleagues and friends, leaving Leo, Claire, and Anna to relax at home, watching movies, reading, or calling and texting their own friends. Leo's phone had been buzzing nonstop since the morning. The guys from room 520 had launched a full-scale assault. Leon, the dorm leader, was on the other end of the line, his voice booming as he wished Leo a happy new year. He even kindly asked if they needed any holiday supplies, offering to ship some of the freshly made date cakes from his hometown. The date cake salesman had not forgotten his primary mission. Marco's call was as flamboyant as ever. He immediately started bragging about all the class reunions he'd been to, claiming that his old female classmates from high school, middle school, and even elementary school were all swooning over him, sending him flirty looks and secret invitations. Getting carried away, he boasted, "Oh, and I found a new connection. One of my middle school classmates is also studying in Portland, at East Bay Financial. She says the place is crawling with beautiful girls. There's even a campus belle who's won the title for 3 years straight. They say she's unbelievably gorgeous. I'm going to have my friend set something up so we can get a look at this legendary beauty. We got to broaden our horizons, man." Leo, still on the phone, glanced at a certain Annie Cakes lounging on the sofa watching TV, the picture of unladylike laziness. She's probably exaggerating. I bet she's just average. When it was Dylan's turn to call, he offered his own enthusiastic New Year's greeting and proudly announced that he had been diligently training his mind at home and had made great progress. He might soon be able to overcome his inner demons and speak to girls with confidence. The next second, Claire walked by and casually asked, "Is that Dylan?" Leo grunted in affirmation and handed her the phone. Claire took it and smiled. "Hello." On the other end of the line, Dylan. A critical hit of silence. Dylan's path to enlightenment was still long. Leo also sent out New Year's texts to other friends, including the big brother who needs cigarette money he'd met 6 months ago. The text went out, but he hadn't gotten a reply yet. The guy was probably busy. Leo didn't mind. Chairman Sterling was indeed busy. Busy bragging to his most trusted subordinate, who had just called to wish him a happy new year. "And a happy new year to you." Yes, Mr. Joe, same to you. How did you know Claire sent me a New Year's text?" "Ha. That girl has really grown up. I couldn't make it back to Northwood this year, and she wasn't even mad at me. She actually remembered to text me for the new year. She didn't say Happy New Year. She said, 'Dad, don't drink so much of the wine at the Portland house.' See? She's worried about her old man's health." And it was a full 10 words. On the other end of the line, Chairman Sterling's voice was loud and his laughter hearty, filled with unconcealable pride. Meanwhile, a certain retired Special Forces operative looked at the text on his own phone from his young mistress. "Happy New Year, Mr. Joe. Get some rest at home. Thanks for all your hard work training Leo recently. Not counting punctuation, 22 words." Mr. Joe took a deep breath and replied with sincere, unwavering agreement. "You're right, Mr. Sterling." On New Year's Day, the calls and texts kept coming. For Leo, one particular call was quite unexpected. In the afternoon, Leo went into the kitchen to start preparing dinner, and Claire naturally followed him in. Leo's phone was left in the living room. It started ringing. Anna came out of the bedroom, heard the phone, and shouted toward the kitchen, "Leo Pig, you have a call." In the kitchen, Leo and Claire were busy with prep and didn't hear her. Annie Cakes picked up the phone and looked at the screen. The caller ID read, "Rich Kid Moocher from the station." A question mark popped up over Anna's head. She thought for a moment, then answered the call herself, her tone casual. "Hello. Leo's busy in the kitchen. Call back later." There was a pause on the other end. Then the enthusiastic voice of a certain Way family heir rang out. "You must be sister-in-law, right?" The Way family heir's voice was bright and enthusiastic. "Hi, sister-in-law. I'm my benefactor's brother. We had noodles together at the train station last time. When you two get back to Portland, dinner's on me." "Benefactor? Noodles?" Anna was confused, But her mindset had already shifted, and she no longer cared about being called sister-in-law. She pursed her lips, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "You've got the wrong person," she said, a smirk forming. "I'm Leo's mom." Wyatt Way was clearly taken aback for a second. Then he quickly recovered, his voice even more enthusiastic and complimentary. "Oh, it's you, Annie. Hello. You sound so young. Your son and I are great friends. His mom is my mom, so it wouldn't be out of line for me to call you godmother, right?" Anna silently howled with laughter, her lips twitching uncontrollably. "Not at all, not at all." When Leo came out of the kitchen, the Way family heir was still enthusiastically chatting with his new godmother, extending a warm invitation. "Godmother, if you ever have time to visit Portland, I'll show you around." Leo walked over and glanced at Anna, holding his phone. "Who is it?" Anna handed him the phone. "My new godson." Completely bewildered, Leo took the phone and recognized the vaguely familiar voice. "Hey, Moocher guy, what's up?" Hearing Leo, Wyatt grew even more excited. "Nothing. Happy New Year, benefactor. I'll never forget the kindness of that meal. Remember our deal? When you get back to Portland, we're getting dinner. Bring your lovely girlfriend. And our godmother, too. I just had a great chat with her. She sounds so young, ha ha ha." After hanging up, bewildered, Leo put down the phone, still trying to process the conversation. "Godmother?" Then it clicked. He shot Anna a dark look, ready to settle the score. But Annie Cakes, sensing danger, had already bolted into the kitchen. "Sister-in-law, I'm here to help you cook." "Wow, you're such a good cook. Let me have a taste." 1 second, she was showering her with effusive praise. The next, the kitchen fell silent. Leo suddenly grinned. Justice had been served. Someone actually dared to eat Bertha Sue's cooking. Bolder than Kevin Zhao himself. Besides his roommates from 520, Leo received a flood of New Year's texts from other high school and college classmates, including a few from Claire's roommates in room 205, which he answered one by one. Among them was a surprisingly short message from someone he hadn't seen in a while, Lily Liu, the it girl of the humanities department. The message was just 4 simple words: "Happy New Year." Nothing more. Perhaps after the incident at the Dynasty Lounge, she had been consumed by guilt and shame, quietly disappearing from their lives for the past few months. Leo looked at the message, smiled, and typed back, "Happy New Year." He didn't add anything else. He didn't really hold it against her. He never had. But some wounds had to be healed by time, and that was something she had to do on her own. It was no longer his concern. Annie Cakes, who had just survived her near-death experience in the kitchen, was lying weakly on the sofa, trying to recover. She saw Leo texting and glanced at the contact name. Lily Liu. Flames of righteous fury ignited in Anna's eyes. She immediately turned and yelled toward the kitchen. "Sister-in-law, Leo Pig is texting another girl. Her name is Lily Liu. Sounds like a bad influence." She had reported him on the spot. But all that came from the kitchen was Claire's airy reply. "It's fine. She's just a defeated opponent. Calm, composed, utterly dominant." The day after New Year's, it started to snow in Northwood. It began with a few scattered flakes in the morning, but by the afternoon, it had turned into a full-blown blizzard, blanketing the entire town. Snow began to accumulate, and the roads turned icy and slick, making it dangerous for pedestrians and vehicles. Fortunately, the Wallace family had stocked up on plenty of supplies and didn't have to worry. That evening, the family sat on the sofa in the warm living room, watching the news. The local broadcast reported that although the snowstorm had been sudden, it was only expected to last a day or two before passing, with minimal economic and social impact. This brought a small sigh of relief from Robert and Susan. But the next news report caught their attention again. The snow in Northwood was nothing. Further south, the catastrophic winter storms that had been featured on the New Year's Eve fundraiser were still raging, showing no signs of letting up. In fact, they seemed to be getting worse. Robert and Susan sighed heavily. Anna, a finance major at East Bay, shook her head, pointing out that the economic losses in the southern states would be impossible to calculate. Leo and Claire remained silent, a heavy feeling in their chests. As people who had lived this life before, they were all too familiar with the 2008 blizzard. They knew it was a once-in-a-century event and how devastating the consequences would be. But reborn into this world, some things felt impossible for one person to change. That same night, in a master bedroom, Robert and Susan tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Through the door, Leo, Claire, and Anna could faintly hear their quiet discussion, as if they were making an important decision. The next morning, when they opened the windows, the snow had begun to lighten. It was welcome news for the people of Northwood. And that same morning, at the breakfast table, Susan looked at Leo and the two girls with a solemn expression and announced her decision. The New Year special had that fundraiser. And the disaster down south is so bad, it just breaks your heart to see it. I was thinking, the Sweet Return Bakery has done well this past half year. It's time we did something good, give back to the community. We'll hold a charity bake sale. We won't just ask for money. We'll use our leftover inventory, make bread and cookies, and sell them at the shop or on the street. All the money we raise will be donated to the disaster relief efforts in the South. Leo, Claire, and Anna were stunned, looking up at Susan. Susan flushed slightly under their gaze. Oh, I know our little shop can't raise that much money, but it's the thought that counts, right? We're not doing it for fame or thanks. We're just doing it to feel better in our own hearts, to have a clear conscience. Robert chimed in, but this time he didn't just agree. His voice was serious. When you're struggling, you look after yourself. When you're doing well, you look after the world. Against the backdrop of a vast and changing era, such a grand statement from a small-town man might have seemed absurd. But to some, it resonated like a thunderclap. Leo looked at his parents and smiled. It's a family tradition, after all, perfectly reasonable. The decision was made by the supreme commander of the Wallace household, Mrs. Susan Wallace. The rest of the family immediately sprang into action. Of course, there were only 5 of them. Robert was in charge of logistics and outreach, contacting old colleagues and subordinates from the factory to recruit volunteers. Leo dove headfirst into the bakery's kitchen, helping the pastry chefs make various cartoon-themed cookies and bread. Anna and Claire, both possessing the kitchen destroyer trait, were of no use in the baking department, but they found other areas where they could contribute. We'll make the promotional signs, said Annie Cakes, the star student from East Bay Financial, putting her sharp mind to work. And flyers for the bake sale. We need to build up some hype. Claire readily agreed, adding, just relying on our own bakery won't be enough. To really spread the word, we should leverage someone else's platform. She and Leo exchanged a knowing look, their eyes lighting up. OmniMart. Anna was still confused. OmniMart? That big supermarket chain in Northwood? It would be great if they cooperated, but how we get their help? Leo and Claire both smiled. That's the easy part. The first time is the hardest. And we've already done it once. That afternoon, the Sweet Return Bakery was already a hive of activity. The staff, informed of the charity sale, were all enthusiastic, voluntarily ending their holidays early to return to work. Leo and the 2 bakers went into the kitchen and began mass-producing bread and cookies. He even designed a few new cartoon styles with a disaster relief theme. A cute, Q-version character making a fist in a snowstorm, with the caption Southern Strong. They were a bit more work to make, but they fit the theme perfectly and would be more effective for spreading the word. Anna and Claire weren't idle either. They worked together to create several large promotional posters and design flyers to be printed. In addition to the sale at the bakery itself, Susan ordered some of the staff to take batches of bread and cookies on pushcarts to busy streets, setting up temporary stalls with banners and donation boxes to maximize their reach. To further expand their impact, they added some of Leo's new disaster relief-themed products to the regular weekly deliveries to supermarkets and convenience stores. To many people's surprise, they met no resistance. In fact, they received the full support of Mr. Peterson, the manager of OmniMart. He not only immediately cooperated with the new product launch, stocking the relief-themed bread and cookies across all his stores, but OmniMart itself also started promoting the charity sale within its own locations. This rendered Leo and Claire's plan to persuade him a second time completely unnecessary. Claire simply smiled. That Mr. Peterson, he has a sharp eye and a quick mind. He had seen the business opportunity within this charity event, not just to make money, but to build up OmniMart's brand and reputation. In the short term, a charity event like this would drive foot traffic, so it wasn't a loss. In the long term, it was all upside. Leo grinned. Indeed, the man's quick response was within his expectations. After all, a general manager who could build a supermarket chain into the top player in Northwood in just a few years had to have some skills. But while he acknowledged Mr. Peterson's ability, he still felt a pang of regret. That old Peterson's brain works too fast. I was hoping to have Bertha Sue go in cosplaying as a CEO in black stockings and high heels to persuade him again. Now the plan's ruined. Claire glanced over, seeing right through him. You wanted to see the black stockings and high heels roleplay. Caught red-handed, Leo instantly adopted a righteous tone. Who said that? Bertha Sue, don't you slander me. I have absolutely no interest in that sort of thing. A small smirk played on the girl's lips, but her tone was nonchalant. Oh well, if you're not interested, then never mind. If you were, I might have been willing to wear it just for you. In the next second, Leo seamlessly changed his tune. But then again, the fourth day of a new year. The Sweet Return Bakery's charity bake sale officially began. Susan was in charge of the main store. Leo, Claire, and Anna took a team of employees outdoors to manage the street stalls. They put up a sign, a 7-day outdoor charity sale for the Southern Snow Disaster Relief. From the very first morning, the sale took off with incredible momentum. Over the past 6 months, Sweet Return Bakery had already made a name for itself in Northwood. Regular customers who saw the stalls on the street would stop by to see what was going on. When they learned it was a charity sale for the disaster victims, they were moved and immediately opened their wallets, buying bread and cookies. Many middle and high school students were also incredibly supportive. Some were die-hard fans of the bakery's cartoon products and came specifically to collect the new designs. Collecting new designs? That gave Leo an idea, a vague memory of some kind of money-making scheme. He couldn't quite place it. He made a mental note to think about it later. Northwood High was still on break. Many of Leo and Claire's underclassmen spotted them at the stall and came over to say hello. When they found out their seniors were doing charity work, they decisively pulled out their wallets and spent their allowance, vowing to follow in Leo and Claire's footsteps, get into Berkeley, and add to Northwood High's presence there. Leo was deeply touched. As he took their money, he offered some sincere advice. You know, there are lots of other great universities out there. Unless you have a death wish, you don't necessarily have to go to Berkeley. But the students' determination could not be extinguished. They puffed out their chests and declared, "Don't try to talk us out of it, senior. We are definitely going to Berkeley. Just you wait. We'll see you there, wearing our Northwood High honor pins." They had perfectly sidestepped every escape route, fully committed to their glorious demise. Since they put it that way, Leo couldn't argue. He thought for a moment and offered one last piece of advice. In that case, you should probably get some life insurance. Northwood High was the best school in town. Many of Leo and Claire's underclassmen who came to greet them at the bake sale stall were wearing their winter school uniforms. One or two didn't attract much attention, but when a steady stream of students in uniform began patronizing the stall, it naturally piqued the curiosity of other passersby. What was the connection between a street-side cookie stall and so many Northwood High students? Some people couldn't help but ask. They learned from students that last year's top graduates from their school were helping their family's bakery with a charity sale for the Southern Snow Disaster. This moved even more people. Many of the parents passing by also had children in school. When they heard that the ones running the stall were top students from Berkeley, last year's county valedictorian and salutatorian, their interest was ignited. They began donating and buying cookies, striking up conversations with these two outstanding children of other people. The more they talked, the more impressed they were. They even went home to bring their own kids back to see for themselves. Look at this brother and sister. They're talented and virtuous. You should learn from them. Even if their kids couldn't match their achievements, just being exposed to their positive influence, soaking up some of that top student good luck, was an excellent thing. Some of the Northwood High students enthusiastically joined in, helping to promote the sale to the parents. "Auntie, uncle, you should buy more for your kids. Get some of their good luck. Maybe your child will become a valedictorian and get into Berkeley too." Parents loved hearing things like that. Pleased, they asked, if they were valedictorians, shouldn't they have gone to Harvard or Yale? Why are you all pushing Berkeley? They were then treated to a passionate lecture from the students about how great Berkeley was and all the wonderful qualities it fostered. As the parents left, the students patted their chests and declared that if their kids ever made it to Berkeley, they just had to mention Northwood High and they'd be taken care of. The parents, dazed and confused, left with a pile of useless trivia and a bag full of charity cookies. Soon, word spread among other parents in town, and they all came to check it out, donating and buying bread to show their support. This gave Leo an idea. His mind started turning. That evening, he went back to the bakery's kitchen and worked through the night. What is this? In the Wallace living room that night, Anna stared at the new types of cartoon cookies and bread on the coffee table, a giant question mark over her head. She picked up a bag. Berkeley biscuits. She looked at the next one. Berkeley bread. Finally, the third. Acceptance slices? Annie Cakes felt like her 3 years of finance education at East Bay were failing her. What the hell? Claire, however, understood immediately. It's just a marketing gimmick, she explained to her sister-in-law, targeting the parent and student market in Northwood, turning them into another major group for the fundraiser. Leo chimed in with a smile. Of course, the products don't have any special powers, but the symbolism is good. It's for good luck. Claire looked at him, raising an eyebrow. You dragged Berkeley into this, too? Leo was perfectly calm. I'm doing a good deed for my alma mater. Dragged is such an ugly word. This is to build Berkeley's reputation. Besides, it's not a commercial activity. It's purely for charity. Borrowing the school's name won't cause any problems. The girl grew thoughtful, analyzing the plan for potential flaws. Even so, it's not foolproof. We need to take some precautions to avoid any backlash. The university might have an issue with it. Leo smiled. It's fine. I already cleared it with my advisor. The department gave its approval. No problem. Claire nodded. If the university is willing to officially endorse it, then we might as well make the brand even bigger. Before she could finish, Leo, without batting an eye, produced a stack of flyers and a poster, placing them on the coffee table. Already thought of it. Already done. He unrolled the poster. It was professionally designed, with several bold lines of text in the center. Berkeley students upholding our motto, united in spirit, selling for charity. Anna gasped, looking at Leo as if he were some kind of god. Leo Pig, when did you get so smart? This is some next-level stuff. You're even more impressive than the seniors at East Bay Financial. It was like a chess game. With every move, he was already thinking 3, even 6 steps ahead. He leveraged everything from OmniMart to Berkeley. From flyers to posters, from emotions to psychology, his marketing techniques were bold yet precise and utterly flawless. Even Claire was moved. As she looked at him, a special light danced in her eyes. She truly hadn't expected her boyfriend's business acumen to be this high. It was almost unbelievable. This kind of talent, wasted on a small bakery, would be a shame. He deserved a much bigger stage. I hear there's a Sterling Holdings in Portland, and its chairman is getting on in years. The next day, several new types of cartoon cookies and bread were launched at the bakery and the outdoor stalls. Berkeley biscuits, Berkeley bread, and acceptance slices. They were put on the shelves in the morning. By the afternoon, they were the talk of every parent group in Northwood. At first, parents came to buy them out of curiosity, for good luck. But soon, the rumors took on a life of their own. Those 2 kids at the stall got into Berkeley because they ate these cookies from Sweet Return Bakery. What? A slice of Berkeley bread a day keeps the rejection letters away. What? Eating Berkeley biscuits can boost your test scores by 100 points. What? Is it the memory bread from Doryman? It was purely customer-driven marketing. The charity sale boomed, and the amount of money raised skyrocketed. First, it was the parents. Then, high school and middle school students started coming out of curiosity, fired up by the dream of getting into a top university. Even students from other, less prestigious high schools in Northwood, who normally had average grades, were swept up in the craze. The unexpected snowstorm had thinned the crowds on the small town streets. Business in the local shops grew quiet. Store owners and employees sat listlessly inside, enjoying the warm air from the heaters, lacking any motivation. This made the energetic shouts from the bakery's charity stall stand out even more. At first, only a few people passed by. They were surprised to see a charity sale still going on in this weather. Their surprise quickly turned to admiration. They would buy some bread and cookies, and without waiting for change, they'd turn and leave, tossing a casual remark over their shoulder. Keep the change. Consider it an extra donation. The people of Northwood were often hot-tempered and rough around the edges, but they were good-hearted. The bakery employees would stare for a moment, then exchange knowing smiles. Their shouts grew even louder, full of renewed energy. Slowly, more and more people heard that the bakery's charity sale was continuing despite the snow. Some were amazed. Others thought it was just a publicity stunt. The latter group usually received a sharp smack on the back of the head from a friend or family member. A publicity stunt? You think someone would stand out in the freezing snow during the holidays for a damn publicity stunt? A charity one at that? If this is a publicity stunt, then we need more of them. Many of the parents who had already donated were also impressed. But beyond their admiration, they realized this was a perfect teaching moment for their own children. They bundled up their kids and braved the snow to return to the stall. Pointing at the once again bustling scene, parents would tell their children, "Look closely. What I want you to learn from them isn't just their high test scores. It's how to be a good person. Your mother and I don't expect you to get into a top university like them. But this lesson, the one about character and integrity, is one you can't afford to skip." The story of the bakery's unwavering charity sale spread. More and more people came to support them. The lines at both the street stall and the main shop were packed with enthusiastic customers. They were getting overwhelmed. The bread and cookies they worked all night to prepare would be sold out almost as soon as they were put on the shelves. Some people who couldn't get any products even tried to stuff cash directly into the donation box. This was strictly forbidden by both Susan and Leo. They weren't an official charity. You do what you can with what you have. They had called it a charity sale, and every penny raised had to come from an actual sale. On this point, mother and son were in complete agreement. But this meant the pressure on the kitchen staff increased exponentially. The original bakers couldn't keep up. Susan urgently called in some of her old friends, including Kevin's mother, Mrs. Run, and a few neighbors. A whole group of women descended on the kitchen, kneading dough, rolling, mixing, and baking. The place was a whirlwind of activity. As soon as a batch was done, it was sent fresh and hot to the front of the store. Another portion was sent by Robert's volunteers from the factory to the outdoor stall. The line at the outdoor stall was once again stretching down the street. Leo decided to set up a second stall at the other end of the street to disperse the crowd. This new stall needed someone to run it. Claire didn't hesitate. "I'll go." Leo looked at his girlfriend and reminded her, "Don't overwork yourself. Stay warm." She just smiled, took his hand, and pressed a new pair of warm gloves into it. "You silly goose. Take care of yourself first." They were still short-handed. Kevin and Tessa came to help. "Dude, something this big and you didn't call me? Not cool, man." Tessa had gone to help Claire at the other stall, while Kevin immediately started complaining to Leo. He then unceremoniously shoved him aside. "Go sit in a shop and warm up. Take a break. I got this." He grabbed a megaphone and started shouting, "Sweet return charity sale. Cartoon cookies and bread. Lots of styles. Eat one today. Get into Berkeley tomorrow. Don't miss out." He had the spiel down perfectly, even better than the employees who had been doing it for days. Later, even the administration of Northwood High heard about it. Mr. Harrison and Dean Evans came to see for themselves. They were moved by the sight of the bustling charity sale. They praised Leo and Claire effusively. "Excellent. This is the kind of quality we expect from our Northwood students." Dean Evans, his face beaming, took it a step further. "This is the spirit of Northwood High, to study the classics, but to care for the world, to practice what you preach. This must be promoted, vigorously promoted. From now on, we'll add this to the school's mission. Regular charity work will become a school tradition." Besides a grand speech, the two educators also rolled up their sleeves and pitched in. They also, on behalf of the school, called in some students to help out as part of a holiday community service project. A simple charity bake sale had turned into a massive event. In the cold post-holiday winter, it grew more and more vibrant. From the third day onward, the daily donations had more than doubled from the first 2 days. It was as if the kindness and charitable spirit of the entire town had been mobilized. And naturally, the name Sweet Return Bakery became known throughout Northwood. "Kid, this is incredible." Mr. Peterson, the manager of Omnimart, stood beside Leo, marveling at the bustling scene at the two stalls. 6 months ago, during the summer, he had his first run-in with Leo. Back then, he hadn't thought much of him. It wasn't until he learned the truth later that he had an amused realization that he'd been tricked by a couple of teenagers. He wasn't upset. Instead, he was impressed. But this time, witnessing the charity sale organized by the Sweet Return Bakery firsthand, seeing it grow from nothing into the massive success it was now, was something else entirely. The donation totals were climbing steadily. Every day, the Sweet Return Bakery and its 2 outdoor charity stalls were swamped with customers. But beneath the surface of this overwhelming success, 2 problems were brewing. First, they were deep in the red. Part of it was labor costs. Even though the bakery staff insisted they didn't need double pay for working through the holiday, and were even willing to volunteer for free, Susan Wallace insisted on paying them triple time, as was proper for holiday overtime. The other major expense was the cost of ingredients. Because they chose to raise money through a bake sale rather than just asking for donations, they had to produce a staggering volume of cookies and bread every day. To boost sales, Susan had even priced the items just below their cost. Losing a few cents on 1 or 2 loaves was nothing. But when the numbers grew exponentially, every dollar they collected for the charity was costing them money out of their own pocket. The second problem was sheer exhaustion. Making a mountain of baked goods every day and serving more than 10 times the usual number of customers was draining enough. Add to that standing outside in the wind, snow, and freezing temperatures, constantly calling out to attract passersby. Several employees had lost their voices. Their faces and hands were chapped and raw with frostbite. Keeping this up for a whole week straight would break even the strongest person. But they all persevered, and Susan and Leo never once considered giving up. Mother and son continued to work on the front lines, leading by example. Susan even left the relative warmth of the main bakery, with its heating and air conditioning, to direct the chaos at the outdoor stalls. Her hands and cheeks were red and sore from the biting wind, yet she seemed tireless. She took meticulous care of her employees, making sure they had hand warmers and hot tea. She greeted every customer with a warm, genuine smile and thanked each one for their contribution. Her hands-on leadership and unwavering spirit earned her even more admiration and respect from everyone around her. Dean Evans from Northwood High was also at one of the stalls, sleeves rolled up, helping out. He watched the owner of Sweet Return Bakery work so tirelessly, yet still laugh and joke with the staff and student volunteers, her presence as warm as a spring breeze. The dean was moved. That woman has such grace, he thought. Remarkable. A true matriarch. The dean, over 50 and still single, felt a stir of interest. He turned to his old colleague, Iron Face Harrison, and discreetly tried to gather some information. The owner has been here directing things all by herself these past few days, he began. Is she still single? A woman this wonderful shouldn't be without a good man by her side. It just isn't right. Iron Face Harrison glanced at his superior and stated, emotionless, that's Leo Wallace's mother. He paused. His father will be here later, along with a crew of his old buddies from the factory. Dean Evans blinked, the realization dawning on him. He coughed awkwardly, his cheeks flushing slightly, before quickly composing himself into his usual righteous posture. Excellent. I was just expressing some normal concern for one of our students' parents, you understand. Don't get the wrong idea. Just then, another thought struck him. Say, there was another lady helping out who also seemed quite dedicated. A Mrs. Wren, I believe. Iron Face Harrison cut him off again, his face a perfect mask. That's Kevin Zhao's mother. Note to self, Harrison thought. Never bring my wife to dinner with the dean again. The air grew colder, but the people's hearts only grew warmer. Seeing Susan and her son leading the charge, the bakery employees rallied, their calls to the crowd losing none of their energy. The sight was infectious, even inspiring the Northwood High students who had been roped in for community service. Watching Leo, their senior, so calm and organized amidst the blizzard, and Claire, not far away, doing the same, filled them with a genuine, heartfelt admiration. For many of them, their resolve hardened. They had to study hard. They had to get into Berkeley. In the swirling snow, Leo brought a cup of hot tea over to the stall for his mother. Mom, drink this. Warm yourself up. Susan took the cup. After one sip, she felt a wave of warmth spread through her, restoring some of her strength. Her spirits lifted, and she turned to her son. Are you tired? Leo smiled. You've been out here all day and haven't complained. You think your son is that delicate? Susan laughed, looking at the long line of customers and her enthusiastic staff. The bakery has really put a lot on the line for this. Some people would say your mother is terrible with money. She teased him. What do you think? Does it bother you? Leo grinned. Let them talk. When I start making money, you can spend it however you want. Go as wild as you like. Susan beamed, reaching out to pinch his cheek. That's my boy. That's the son I raised. She handed the tea back to him. You drink some too. Don't get sick. Mother and son stood together in the snow, sharing the cup of tea, laughing and talking. Click. The sound of footsteps approached. Everyone at the stall looked up. Susan's eyes lit up. Oh, your father's here. Robert Wallace arrived like a conquering hero, flanked by a troop of his loyal employees from the machining factory. They came bearing a fresh batch of cookies and bread from the bakery, along with an arsenal of cold weather gear. As soon as they arrived, the factory workers boomed. All right, kids, clear out. Time for the B team. Go rest, go eat. Your uncles are taking over the shift. They greeted Susan warmly. Ma'am, you've worked hard. We're here with Rob to relieve you. Susan returned their greetings with a wide smile, her eyes fixed on her husband as he walked up to her. Robert looked at his wife and son, a broad grin spreading across his face. You two must be exhausted. I made dinner at home and packed it up. All your favorites. Eat it while it's hot. Like a magician, he produced several containers of food from behind his back, presenting them to his wife and son as if they were treasure. Susan sat down contentedly and started to eat, glancing at her husband with a proud smile. Your son just told me I can be as reckless with money as I want in the future. He's going to make a fortune and support his old mom. Robert's expression shifted to one of alarm. What? The next second, he was glaring at his son. You little punk, trying to steal my job? Are you? Taking care of your mother is my responsibility. You just worry about taking care of your own wife. His declaration was delivered with the force of a factory foreman. All Leo could do was laugh helplessly and nod in submission. Beside them, Susan was beaming, a picture of pure happiness. She picked up a piece of food with her chopsticks and affectionately fed a bite to her husband, then another to her son. The photos and footage from that day hit the Northwood Gazette and the local news the very next morning. The reporter, Wes Zhang, had wanted to interview the organizer of the fundraiser, Susan Wallace, but while she was a force of nature when running her business, the idea of a formal TV interview made her shy, and she politely declined. Leo wasn't interested in the publicity either, so he also turned down Wes's enthusiastic request. Unable to land the main subjects, Wes settled for the next best thing, the representative from Northwood High. After all, the unexpected participation of the students had added a special shine to the event. The best and brightest from Northwood County's top high school, demonstrating both academic excellence and moral character. It was a story worth telling. Thus, the duty of the interview fell squarely on the shoulders of one Dean Evans, a man who had narrowly avoided a scandalous misunderstanding just the day before. Facing the camera, Dean Evans was the very picture of righteousness, speaking with eloquent passion. He began by fairly stating that the charity drive was initiated by the parent of a distinguished alumnus, with the invaluable help of two recent graduates, the valedictorian and salutatorian, no less. Then, he emphasized that a commitment to public service had always been a cherished tradition and virtue at Northwood High, a testament to the school's outstanding character. And this character, he declared, would only continue to be nurtured. Our principal has been made aware of this event and is following it with great interest. He has made a decision. First, we will be awarding Claire Sterling and Leo Wallace with honorary alumni medals from Northwood High. Second, we will plant this seed of charity in the hearts of all our students. From this day forward, we will hold regular charity events to cultivate a spirit of community and compassion in every student. After this grand pronouncement, Dean Evans paused, holding the microphone. Then, a warm, welcoming smile spread across his face. Additionally, Northwood High's early admissions for the fall semester will begin in just 4 months. Interested students and parents are welcome to call us anytime for more information. Wait, I'm not finished. Let me just add a few more things. Watching the news report on TV, Kevin was blown away. Holy shit, our dean is really gunning for a promotion. Tessa nodded beside him. He'll probably be vice principal by next year. It's just a shame, though, Kevin said with a touch of regret. Leo, Claire, and his mom did all the hard work, but they aren't the ones in the spotlight. Tessa smiled. I don't think they care about that kind of fame. For them, just making the fundraiser a success was enough. She paused, unfolding a copy of the Northwood Gazette. Besides, she added, her smile widening, these pictures in the paper tell the real story. The Sweet Return Bakery's charity drive was a noble cause, a unifying effort that showcased the spirit of Northwood's people, and it had garnered the attention of the county officials. The Northwood Gazette dedicated more than half a page to the story. Among the text, 3 photographs, taken by Wes Zhang himself, stood out. The first showed the mother and son who started it all, taking a brief moment to care for each other amidst the bustle of the stall. The son was calm and confident, the mother's smile filled with pride. The second showed the family of 3, sitting on a simple bench, sharing a meal in the swirling snow. The love between husband and wife was palpable, the atmosphere warm and joyful, their smiles radiating a gentle heat. The third showed the boy and girl in the snow, separated only by the donation box. The girl was carefully wrapping her scarf around the boy's neck. They looked at each other and smiled, a silent understanding passing between them, a perfectly matched pair that drew sighs of admiration. The detailed report, accompanied by these powerful photos, created a huge stir throughout the small town of Northwood. Praise poured in from all corners. The young couple in the third photo was particularly captivating, so good-looking, so perfect together. When people learned they were both students at Berkeley, the admiration only grew. Without any deliberate effort, Berkeley's reputation began to soar in Northwood County. People marveled that the university could produce such outstanding young people. Its prestige, just a step below Harvard and Yale, was clearly well-deserved. Parents across town made a new resolution. Their kids had to aim for Berkeley, too. Overnight, Northwood was gripped by Berkeley fever. In 7 days, the bake sale raised $270,000. That was the physical limit of what the Sweet Return Bakery staff could produce, but it wasn't the limit of Northwood's generosity. Over at Omnimart, their own charity sales raised another $390,000, bringing the grand total to a neat $660,000. After consulting with county officials, the funds were divided. One portion was given to a local official charity to be directed to the disaster zone in the South, aiding those most in need. The other portion was used by Omnimart to purchase relief supplies, which were then shipped directly to the affected areas by truck. The event had come to a perfect, successful conclusion. With everything finished, everyone could finally go home, rest, and breathe a sigh of relief. That evening, Leo and Claire got home first. Robert, Susan and Anna were in another car a little behind them. Leo walked into the living room, kicked off his shoes, and threw himself onto the sofa, sinking into the soft cushions. Finally, he sighed. It's over. Claire took off her shoes at the entrance and walked over gracefully. Seeing the exhaustion he couldn't hide, she felt a pang of sympathy. She sat down beside him and gently began to massage his temples with her slender, delicate fingers. "Don't work yourself this hard again," she said softly. Feeling the gentle pressure of his girlfriend's fingers, Leo closed his eyes contentedly. "It's fine," he said with a smile. "Think of it as training, getting myself ready. When I really start my career, it's going to be even tougher than this." Claire frowned slightly. She had seen what Leo was capable of, and she had been amazed. At first, she instinctively felt that someone with his talent deserved a bigger stage. But now, seeing him so tired, she couldn't help but want to change her mind. Career? What career? She thought. Claire Sterling, have more than enough money. Enough to let my man live off me for the rest of his life. And I'd be happy to do it. Leo opened his eyes. Seeing the look on her face, he guessed what she was thinking and couldn't help but smile again. Before she could react, he reached out, gently took her chin in his hand, and drew her closer. A playful smile touched his lips. "If I don't work hard," he teased, "how am I supposed to take care of you?" The move was sudden, unexpected. In all the time since they had made their relationship official, this was the first time he had ever been so bold, so forward with her. Claire froze, completely stunned. She stared at the handsome face so close to hers, at his easy, confident smile. Her heart gave a violent lurch. Her face flushed crimson. It wasn't just Claire who was shocked. If any of their friends had been there to witness it, they would have been rubbing their eyes in disbelief. The established dynamic of the power couple, as everyone knew it, was that the seemingly cool and distant Claire was usually the one taking the initiative, even publicly teasing Leo. She was the classic alpha in the relationship. Leo, on the other hand, often seemed more passive in their day-to-day interactions. Even the guys in room 520 and his best friend, Kevin, thought this was perfectly reasonable. Marco had once said admiringly, "Bertha has this ice queen vibe, but underneath it all, she radiates pure dominance." Any guy would feel their confidence shrink by half in front of a girl like that. Being a little passive makes perfect sense. Kevin's take was even more direct. "The man who can take the lead with Claire Sterling hasn't been born yet," he declared. "Whoever it is, he's going to be the one taking orders." But for Leo, the theories spun by his armchair strategist friends were completely off the mark. His personality was naturally calm and easygoing. In this new life, he wasn't like the protagonists in web novels who immediately burst onto the scene with overwhelming charisma, crushing enemies, and wooing women. He hadn't been in a rush to do anything world-shaking. He was simply content to peacefully savor the precious moments of his second youth. He kept his edge hidden, his mentality slowly reverting to that of the young man he'd once been. When faced with Claire's cool, assertive personality, he had naturally adapted, which made him appear shy and passive. But some things can't stay hidden forever. The decade of struggle in his past life, the climb he'd made through his own hard work, had forged not just his achievements but also a calm, steady, and mature mindset. That maturity hadn't vanished just because he was back in a young body. The charity fundraiser was the catalyst. It was a small-scale test of the skills he had honed in his previous life, and its success quietly brought back the confidence and presence he once possessed. It was like a sword being drawn just a few inches from its sheath, a brief, startling flash of brilliance. And so, tonight, on the living room sofa, facing the girlfriend who was now so close, it felt completely natural for Leo to follow his instincts, to reach out and lift her chin. Seeing the stunned, foolish look on her face, he found it amusing and broke into a grin. "What's wrong? Did you just realize your boyfriend is actually pretty handsome?" Since they had started dating, this was the first time Claire had felt so flustered, her heart hammering so wildly in her chest. But meeting his gaze, she forced herself to appear calm and replied coolly, "You still look like the same old idiot. Don't be so conceited." Leo raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" Claire looked at his playful smile, and though her heart was pounding, she stubbornly insisted, "Of course." Before she could finish, his actions outpaced her words. He leaned in and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was assertive and demanding, catching her completely off guard. She immediately melted into it, losing herself in the intoxicating taste. Overwhelmed, dizzy. When they finally broke apart, Leo looked at her, the smile returning to his lips. And now, the kiss had left Claire breathless, her chest rising and falling rapidly, her face flushed a deep crimson. Hearing his teasing question, she struggled to pull herself back from the dizzying haze and couldn't help but bite her lip. At a time like this, she whispered, "You shouldn't talk." The next moment, before he could reply, she lunged forward, sealing his lips with her own. It was suddenly fierce, a passionate, desperate kiss, until it was interrupted by the sound of a key in the lock. Robert, Susan, and Anna had arrived. They pushed the door open, and their eyes fell upon the two young lovers locked in a passionate embrace on the living room sofa. They froze, turning into 3 stone statues. The air went dead silent. Claire scrambled away from Leo, her face so hot it felt like it was on fire. "Dad, Mom." Leo, however, was remarkably composed. Without a blush or a flutter, he explained, "We were just debriefing the fundraiser." His parents snapped out of their trance. Robert was still confused. "Debriefing? You debrief like that?" But Susan caught on instantly. "Oh, a debriefing," she said, a look of perfect understanding on her face. "Well, you two carry on then. Your father, Anna, and I will just go to our room and talk about other things. You two just keep debriefing." Beaming, she grabbed her husband and Anna and started pulling them toward the back of the house, not forgetting to cover Anna's eyes with her hand. Anna, however, was a bonfire of gossip-fueled curiosity and refused to be moved. "And Susan, let me go. I want to see how they debrief." She struggled. Susan gave her a sharp tap on the head. "What's a little kid like you watching this for? Back to the room with me." "I'm not little," Anna protested indignantly. "I'm a junior in college. I'm 2 years older than Leo." Susan paused, looking at her goddaughter. A glint appeared in her eye. "You're right. You're not a kid anymore. So when are you going to bring a boyfriend home?" Anna froze. The reality of the situation hit her like a ton of bricks. Wait, what kind of counterattack was that? Why is it suddenly aimed at me? Later that night, the 5 of them sat around the dining table for a late supper, a small celebration for the successful end of the fundraiser. At the table, Anna mischievously asked Leo how the debriefing had gone, whether it was soft and sweet. Her question was cut short by another good-natured tap on the head from Susan. Undeterred, Anna pouted and picked up a copy of the day's newspaper that had just arrived. She proudly showed it to her aunt and uncle, pointing out the pictures and praising how photogenic they were and how beautiful Claire looked. And then there's Leo the pighead, she thought. I guess he counts as a person. As she flipped through the paper, she stumbled upon another article. Coincidentally, it reported that Sterling Holdings, based in the city, had recently donated $30 million and a massive amount of relief supplies to the southern disaster area. It turned out that Claire's father hadn't been able to come to Northwood for the holiday, not just because of work, but because he was dedicating a significant amount of his energy to this cause. They had been officially dating for 2 months, and the affection between them was still growing, deepening into a fierce, quiet passion this winter. The past week had been a blur of work, leaving no time for anything else. They would come home exhausted, barely managing to wash up before collapsing into their separate beds. Until tonight. With the fundraiser over, their minds could finally relax. The unexpected moment on the sofa, when Leo had shed his passive persona and taken the lead, had acted as a catalyst, striking a chord deep within her. And that led to this moment in the bathroom. It was a coincidence that they both came to brush their teeth at the same time. Such a coincidence. It clearly called for a celebration. Leo's arm was already wrapped around her slender waist as he leaned in and kissed her again. When they parted, his lips were smeared with her toothpaste. She couldn't help but stifle a laugh. "I haven't even rinsed yet." Leo touched the foam on his lips, unfazed. "It's fine. It's like you're brushing my teeth for me. A brand new way to brush your teeth," he thought. A perfect entry from Mr. Joe's intelligence log. The next moment, however, a sly, seductive smile played on Claire's lips. "Perfectly reasonable," she whispered. Before he could react, she stretched out her long, fair arms, pushed him back against the door, and stepped forward, capturing his lips with her own. Leo, he'd been ambushed, pinned against the wall. It seemed Bertha Sue wasn't one to accept defeat. The blush and racing heart she'd felt on the sofa had faded, replaced by a renewed determination to reclaim the upper hand. But Leo wasn't about to let that happen. Tonight, for once, he had asserted his boyfriend LY dominance. He wasn't going to let the Sterling fox snatch it back. The thought flashed through his mind. He tightened his grip on her waist, spun them around in a single, fluid motion, eliciting a soft gasp from Claire, and reversed their positions. He pressed her against the door. The tables had turned. Another pin. Claire hadn't expected Leo to be so assertive tonight. The force of the move left her slightly dazed. She blinked, looking up into her boyfriend's eyes. Leo gazed at the beautiful face so close to his, at the rare look of stunned confusion on her usually cool and ethereal features. He found it utterly adorable, and it made his heart race. Leaning down, he kissed her soft lips again. The kiss was deep and possessive, so intense it almost made Claire's knees buckle. Every inch of her skin felt like it was on fire. Before she could fully process what was happening, she realized with a jolt of panic that his hands had begun a bold and illicit exploration. Her mind went blank. For a second, she almost lost all control. But a tiny thread of reason held on. She fought to keep her voice from trembling. "Don't," she mumbled. "My parents and Annie cakes. They're right outside." As if on cue, a concerned voice came from outside the door. "What are you two doing in there? What was that noise?" Claire bit her lower lip, struggling to sound as calm as possible. "It's nothing, Mom. I just slipped and fell." Leo couldn't help but grin. He leaned close to her ear and whispered, "Nice lie, Bertha." The sight of his smug, triumphant expression made her grit her teeth in annoyance. Seizing the opportunity while he was close, she launched a decisive counterattack. She opened her mouth and bit down gently on his right earlobe. Leo, whose ears were naturally sensitive, went completely numb. Claire pressed her advantage. With a surge of strength, she pushed him back against the door again. Smack! Before he could recover, she captured his earlobe once more, nibbling it as a punitive warning. This time it was Leo's turn to gasp, goosebumps erupting all over his body. From outside, Susan's voice drifted in again, laced with confusion. "Huh? What was that noise?" Pinned against the door by his girlfriend, Leo gritted his teeth and forced himself to sound calm. It's nothing. I slipped and fell too." In the master bedroom, Robert and Susan looked at each other, baffled. They're just brushing their teeth, and they're both falling down? Is the floor in there that slippery? When Leo and Claire finally emerged from the bathroom, they were once again the picture of composure, their expressions betraying nothing. One headed for the living room, the other for her bedroom. They passed each other in the hallway with serene nods. "Good night. You should wipe the toothpaste off your mouth." "You too." Then, without breaking composure, they both casually wiped the lingering traces from their lips and went their separate ways. Claire returned to her room. Anna, already burrowed cozily under the covers, popped her head out and gave her a suspicious look. "What were you two doing in there for so long? Brushing your teeth takes that long." Claire's expression was cool and nonchalant. "Nothing. We were just chatting, debriefing the fundraiser." Anna's suspicion deepened. Debriefing? A proper debriefing or an improper one? But Claire ignored her sister-in-law's questioning gaze, walked to her bed, slid under the covers, and switched off the light. "It's late. Let's sleep." But sleep didn't come easily. Lying in the darkness, Claire tossed and turned. She couldn't stop thinking about Leo's uncharacteristically forceful moves in the bathroom, the deep kisses, and the teasing way he had lifted her chin on the sofa. So playful, yet so confident. She had never imagined that her little idiot could have such a mature, masculine side. Before tonight, she had always viewed their relationship as her, the older sister, endlessly teasing her younger, puppy dog boyfriend. And she had enjoyed it. But being on the receiving end for the first time, the way it made her blush and her heart pound, the shameful yet thrilling feeling of being completely flustered. There was a strange part of her that wanted him to be that forceful with her again. She snapped back to reality, feeling her face burn in the darkness. "Get a grip, Claire Sterling. What are you thinking?" Suddenly, a sleepy voice came from beside her. "Claire, what's wrong? Are you thinking about Leo the pighead?" The question nearly shattered Claire's composure. "I'm not. I wasn't," she stammered, forcing a denial. "Don't be ridiculous. As if a little idiot like Leo Hammer Wallace could get me this flustered." In the darkness, Anna seemed to pause. Then an even greater confusion entered her voice. "Then, why are you hugging me so tight?" Claire froze, as if waking from a dream. Mortified, she instantly let go. That night, one girl found it impossible to sleep. And out on the living room sofa, one young man was wide awake. Lying on the couch, Leo stared at the bright moon outside the window, lost in thought. After a while, as if having made a decision, he got up. He tiptoed into the study next to the living room, sat down at the desk, and turned on the computer. He had been reborn for half a year. He'd spent it relaxing, enjoying his second chance. But as a man with knowledge of the future, it was time to get serious. He'd been reborn for over 6 months, and Leo had to admit he'd been a bit of a slacker. The generous way to put it was that he was unambitious and content. But the reality was, aside from acing his final exams to get into Berkeley and helping his mom open her dream bakery, he hadn't really done anything worthy of a person reborn with knowledge of the future. Oh, right, there was one other thing. He'd absolutely demolished Sarah Lynn. Tearing down that manipulative fake was definitely an accomplishment. And then there was the fact that he'd somehow, through a series of reasonable coincidences, started dating Northwood High's resident ice queen, Bertha Sue. But he couldn't really take credit for that. The Sterling Fox had done most of the work, with strong assists from Mr. Joe, venue support from Mr. Chin, and 2 stellar guest appearances by the criminal Gavin John. Not to mention the blessings of the spirits at the old stone chapel. But he was getting sidetracked. He had no complaints about the past 6 months. Life had been comfortable and pleasant. He wasn't a competitive person by nature and hadn't felt the need to build an empire the second he came back to life. But the ability was there. Not just the business acumen honed in his past life, but the ultimate cheat code, knowledge of the future. If he wanted to, he could achieve things 10, even 100 times more easily than anyone else. He hadn't had the motivation before, but the charity bake sale had ignited something in him. For one, personally planning and executing the 7-day outdoor fundraiser, watching it all unfold smoothly under his direction, had felt familiar and empowering. It brought back memories of his past career, and he found he actually missed the challenge. More importantly, though, were the words his parents had said at the breakfast table just a few days ago. When you're struggling, you look after yourself. When you're doing well, you look after the world. That one sentence had truly moved him. With great power comes great responsibility. When you have little, you focus on your own survival. When you have more than enough, you reach out and help others. That was the Wallace family way. Maybe he, Leo Wallace, didn't have a burning desire for wealth. But since fate had given him this second chance, this incredible advantage, it would be a monumental waste not to use it to do some good, to help people. To have power and not use, it was to let a diamond gather dust, a form of selfishness in itself. And besides all that, on a much simpler level, the guy was in a serious relationship now. He couldn't just plan on living off his girlfriend forever, could he? A man had to stand on his own 2 feet. But 1,000 grand plans all started with the same first step, making money. For Leo, there were countless career paths to choose from. The choice itself wasn't the problem. The biggest hurdle was the initial capital. The lottery? He didn't remember any numbers. Bitcoin? That would take years to mature. Sports betting, stocks, real estate. Leo recalled the reborn protagonist novels he'd read in his past life. The heroes had all sorts of tricks, but the high-return options were slow, taking 3, 5, even 10 years, while others required a massive initial investment. Fortunately, he thought of a perfect method for 2008. In the dim light of the study, the computer screen flickered to life. Leo opened a browser and typed in a URL. After a brief loading screen, the web page appeared. The domain marketplace. Leo smiled. Compared to other methods, this one had a relatively short turnaround time and offered enormous returns. And 2008 was the perfect time for it. Domain flipping. Simply put, he would register web addresses and sell them. In 2007 and 2008, the domain trading market was just beginning to boom. In his past life, he'd read countless articles about it. Domains registered for $50 or $100 were being sold for hundreds, thousands, even hundreds of thousands of times their initial cost. He remembered 2 particularly famous deals. One happened in 2008. The domain fund, .com, was bought by a New York company for a staggering sum. The other was in 2010. The company that would become China's largest social media platform, Weibo, paid 8 million yuan, over $1 million, for its official domain, Weibo.com. Leo opened a domain lookup site and quickly typed in both addresses. Fund.com was already registered. Leo tried sending an email to the owner, but received no immediate reply. It was probably too late anyway. The sale was imminent, and the current owner was the same person who'd made the deal in his past life. No chance of swooping in on that one. He took a deep breath and searched for Weibo.com. It, too, was already registered. But before disappointment could set in, he saw something that made his heart leap. The query results showed the current owner was someone named Chun Ke. In his past life, the Weibo Corporation had bought the domain from a man named Zhang Weibo, who had supposedly snatched it up from another seller for next to nothing. In other words, Zhang Weibo hadn't made his move yet. Or maybe he hadn't even noticed the domain was for sale. Which meant it was now Leo Hammer Wallace's turn to get in on the ground floor. The seller hadn't listed a price, but they had left their contact info. Leo immediately added their AIM screen name, which was also Chun Ke. To his surprise, the person was online and accepted his friend request almost instantly. Leo took another deep breath and typed his first message, buying a domain. There was a short pause on the other end, then a list popped into the chat window, a jumbled mess of various URLs, followed by a message. Pick one. Then ask for the price. The guy was clearly a pro, an old hand at this. But Leo scanned the list. It was mostly junk, worthless domains you couldn't even give away for free. Selling the official domain of a future social media giant for only $10,000, and then having the nerve to haggle. Even the most ruthless penny pincher would have to admire his audacity. But for Leo, there were two good reasons. First, in any negotiation, big or small, you never let your opponent know what you're really after. 10 grand for Weibo.com was, of course, an absolute steal. But the seller had no idea of its true value. His price was based entirely on the buyer's perceived interest. If Leo had agreed immediately, the seller might have smelled blood, jacked up the price, or found an excuse to delay the sale and relist it for more. So, he couldn't appear too eager. Second, while $10,000 was nothing for that domain, for a regular college freshman like Leo, it was a bit steep. So, he had to drive the price down. No holding back. In the end, he managed to grind the price down to $1,500. The seller, Chun K, finally relented, though not without a final, wistful comment. This one's a real gem, my prized possession. If I didn't feel such a connection with you, bro, I'd never sell it for this low. Leo almost rolled his eyes. In the half hour he'd been chatting with this guy, he'd heard him describe at least 10 different domains as his prized possession. He didn't believe a word of it. Regardless, $1,500, plus the $1,200 he'd spent on another domain as a smokescreen, came to less than $3,000. To secure the Weibo domain for that price was a win of epic proportions. Still, Leo kept his cool and didn't rush to close the deal. He arranged to have the seller officially list the domain on the platform the following evening, at which point he would make the payment. Chun K agreed. Just as Leo was about to close the chat window, the seller sent another enthusiastic message. Bro, anything else you like? I've got plenty of other hidden gems. Add another few hundred, and I'll practically give you one. Leo chuckled, ready to refuse, but the guy had already sent another list. This one was shorter, with only about 10 domains, all of which looked like junk at first glance. Huh. Suddenly, Leo froze. His eyes were glued to the last line on the list. He thought he might be hallucinating. After checking and rechecking, he took a deep breath and typed. The last one, 200. For a sale of only a few $100s, they haggled for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Chun K gave in with a pained sigh. Fine. Since we have such a connection, my friend, 250 it is. I originally wanted to register Kaizen.com, but some American guy snagged it first. Had no choice but to add some numbers to the end. Otherwise, this domain would be worth at least a few $100,000. Leo nodded in agreement. Definitely. If it had been a Kaizen.com domain, he knew from his past life that it had sold for over $3 million. But then, he glanced back at the domain name he had just secured from his new friend Chun, Kaizen001.com. A strange expression crossed his face. For most domains, adding numbers made them worthless. But the one he'd just bought was the exception. Because as fate would have it, when the founder of Happy Nest launched the site in March 2008, he also failed to acquire the original Kaizen.com domain. The URL that Happy Nest ended up using was precisely Kaizen001.com. The name Happy Nest might not ring a bell for many younger people today, but one mention would bring it all back. In 2008, when Happy Nest burst onto the scene, it launched a little game that swept the entire nation, Garden Grab. For a grand total of $2,950, he had bought the official domains for both Weibo and Happy Nest. The deal was done. Both parties were satisfied. As they ended their conversation, the seller, Chun K, didn't forget to give his sucker of a customer one last enthusiastic sales pitch. Bro, if you ever want to buy more domains, come to me. My name is Chun K, but when it comes to domains, I've got it all. Nothing's missing from my collection. Leo felt a wave of sympathy and gratitude for the clueless seller. Sure thing, he typed back sincerely. We'll do business again. The guy really doesn't lack for domains, Leo thought. He just lacks a little bit of foresight and luck. That night, Leo fell asleep on the living room sofa with a grin plastered across his face. When he woke up the next morning, the smile was still there, impossible to wipe away. At breakfast, his parents kept shooting him worried glances. What's gotten into you? His mother asked. You've been grinning like an idiot since sunrise. Anna eyed him suspiciously. Must have had a good dream last night, she concluded. Even Claire thought he was acting strangely. After breakfast, she pulled him aside, her brow furrowed with concern. She placed a hand on his forehead to check his temperature, thinking he must have caught a cold. Leo laughed, taking her hand. I don't have a fever. I just thought of something that made me happy. She raised an eyebrow. What is it? Leo smiled. Something that's going to make me rich. Claire stared at him, and now she was genuinely worried. She placed her delicate palm on his forehead again, checking carefully. You're definitely running a fever. Leo, his internal cartoon self, was just as bewildered, a question mark popping up over his head. What? What pervert? What on earth is Bertha thinking? It's a legitimate happy thing, he explained, exasperated. Now, Claire was curious. What is it? Leo smiled. Something that's going to make me rich. She raised an eyebrow. Like you found a wallet? Leo put on a mysterious air. Like I'm going to become a millionaire. Claire stared at him, and now she was genuinely worried. She placed her delicate palm on his forehead again, checking carefully. You're definitely running a fever. This conversation was going nowhere. With a long-suffering sigh, Leo removed his girlfriend's persistent hand from his forehead and headed for the door in a huff. These foolish mortals of this timeline, they just couldn't comprehend the joy of a man reborn. With the domains for Happy Nest and Weibo in his possession, it was a guaranteed, risk-free path to a massive payday. But it was the kind of secret he couldn't share with anyone. Only someone with knowledge of the future could believe that 2 ordinary domains, bought for a few $1,000s, would one day represent internet giants worth billions. Even with Claire, as much as he wanted to explain the logic, he couldn't. To do so would mean revealing his secret identity as a reborn soul. That would probably scare the Sterling Fox half to death. Thinking about it, Leo, who was now putting on his shoes at the door, shook his head and dismissed the idea. As happy as he was these days, being a reborn person was sometimes a lonely existence. He occasionally wished he had someone to share it with, someone who had gone through the same thing and could truly understand. That would be nice. Meanwhile, Claire had just returned to her room, still looking puzzled. Anna, who was sitting on her bed, reading a novel on her phone, looked up. What's wrong? The girl shook her head. Nothing. Your brother is plotting to get rich and become a millionaire. Annie Cakes blinked, then declared with absolute certainty. He definitely has a fever. A bad one. Claire laughed. I don't know. He seemed pretty serious about it. Anna snorted. What good is being serious? You can't just become a millionaire because you want to. I think he's been reading too many of those rebirth novels. The casual comment made Claire pause for a moment. Then she smiled too. Maybe. For a student to build a multi-million-dollar fortune from scratch. That was something only the protagonists of those web novels could pull off. Of course, for her, the great heiress of the Sterling family, it wasn't necessary. A millionaire? That would be a downgrade. But Anna's comment had sparked a thought. Claire looked at her sister-in-law curiously. In those rebirth novels, are there any stories about 2 people being reborn? Anna looked completely baffled. Her little face scrunched up in confusion. A double rebirth? She waved a dismissive hand. Who would write something like that? It would totally bomb. This was 2008. The rebirth genre was still in its infancy. The more innovative plot twists were still a decade away. Claire thought about it, then nodded with a relieved smile. You're right. Just being reborn herself, being able to meet her little idiot again, was a stroke of incredible luck. To hope that he was also a reborn soul, that was asking for too much. Good things like that didn't really happen. Leo's outing was a quick trip to the bank downstairs to activate online banking for his debit card. That way, he could finalize the deal with his new friend Shin-Kei, the seller who had everything but luck and a clue. After finishing the paperwork, Leo checked his account balance. He still had several $1,000s. Part of it was allowance from his parents, and part was spending money he'd saved up before college. Yes, without Sarah Lynn in the picture, his expenses in the last few months of high school had dropped dramatically. All his meals had been covered by the wealthy Claire. Of course, after the transaction tonight, his savings would be cut in half. But Leo wasn't worried. With 2 killer domains in his portfolio, cashing would be like hitting the jackpot. For a reborn person like him, it wasn't just about knowing the value of the domains. It was about knowing when they would be sold. The Weibo domain would take a year or 2. No rush there. But the Happy Nest domain was a different story. The sale was right around the corner. It was early February 2008. In just over a month, Happy Nest would officially launch, using the very domain he now owned. In other words, after the site's founder, a Mr. Chung, failed to secure the original Kaisen.com domain due to the exorbitant price, he would soon be looking for an alternative, Kaisen001.com. The price wouldn't be astronomical, but it would definitely be in the 6-figure range. Leo already had his asking price in mind. Now, all he had to do was wait for them to come knocking. At dinner that evening, Leo was still preoccupied with his domain strategy and seemed a bit distant. Claire, sitting across from him, noticed. After the meal, she pulled him aside again and spoke seriously, choosing her words with care. We're still in school. We should be focusing on our studies. You don't need to stress yourself out trying to make money. She paused, then gave him a gentle smile. Besides, if you ever really need money, you don't have to worry. I have it. Leo couldn't help but laugh. Is this you officially becoming my sugar mama? The sterling heiress looked at him without blinking, her expression completely earnest. Yes, from now on, I'll be the breadwinner, and you'll be the arm candy. She thought for a moment, then raised an eyebrow. If you feel bad about it, you can bring me tea, give me massages, and wash my feet as compensation. Leo was dumbfounded. Is this a sugar mama arrangement, or are you hiring a servant? Bringing tea, giving massages. Wait, washing my feet. A strange temptation flickered within him. He quickly shook it off, fighting back the sudden and powerful urge. No way, he said, shaking his head. Then I'd really be living off you. Claire's gaze was clear and steady. What's wrong with that? I want you to live off me, and only you are allowed to. It was probably the most romantic thing a guy could ever hear. It was the calm certainty in her voice that made it so heart-stopping. Leo felt a warmth spread through his chest, but he still smiled and shook his head. No guy with any self-respect lives off his girlfriend. Besides, when they re-emerged from the bathroom, Leo and Claire were once again the picture of composure, their faces betraying nothing of the debriefing that had just occurred. Except, perhaps, for Leo's slightly swollen lips and the faint teeth marks on his right earlobe, and the suspicious red mark on Claire's slender, pale neck. Otherwise, everything was perfectly normal. Anna, returning from the kitchen with a glass of water, passed them in the hallway. She gave them a thorough, up-and-down look, the flames of gossip burning brightly in her eyes. You two were in the bathroom for a long time. Pretty intense, huh? Facing her sister-in-law's teasing, Claire remained cool as a cucumber. Don't get the wrong idea. We were just discussing some important business. Debriefing. Oh, Anna drawled, her eyes darting mischievously from Leo's earlobe to his lips, then to the mark on Claire's neck. A debriefing, huh? Looks like you covered all the bases. She clicked her tongue. When it came to his cousin, Leo was much more direct. If you're so interested, he retorted, why don't you go find someone to debrief with? Annie Cakes was momentarily speechless. She shot him a glare, then spun around and stomped off toward the master bedroom to tattle. Aunt Susan, Uncle Rob, Leo, and her daughter-in-law are ganging up on me. From inside the room, Susan's calm voice floated out. Is that so? Well then, you should hurry up and find a boyfriend. He can help you bully them back. A series of giant, invisible question marks seemed to appear over the bedroom door. Anna, question mark. Utterly defeated, Annie Cakes retreated to the guest room in a huff. You're all bullying me. Is there no place for a single person in this house? In the hallway, Leo and Claire couldn't help but laugh. Leo turned to Claire and smiled. Anyway, don't worry. You have to have faith in your boyfriend's abilities. Somehow, in the bathroom, he had managed to persuade his skeptical girlfriend with his silver tongue. Quite literally, Claire instinctively touched the red mark on her neck, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. She shot him an annoyed look. I don't know about your abilities, but you're certainly a professional vampire. Not a vampire, he corrected her righteously. Please, call me a professional strawberry farmer. A professional? Her eyes narrowed dangerously. You sound experienced. In that split second, the handsome young man's brain went into overdrive. You're the first, he said smoothly, and you will be the last. Top-tier survival instincts, fully engaged. Claire nodded, satisfied for the moment, and spared Leo Hammer Wallace's life. She looked him over again and raised an eyebrow. Well then, here's wishing the master strawberry farmer a speedy fortune. Before he could answer, she smiled again. And if you don't get rich, you can always come back to me. I'll have that sugar mama gig waiting for you. A promise like that was more moving than 1,000 flowery compliments. Leo was so touched he nearly burst into tears. He puffed out his chest and vowed, Don't worry, if I don't strike it rich, I'm definitely coming back to live off you. I'll wash your feet every single day. He conveniently skipped over the tea and massages part. Claire didn't know whether to laugh or get angry. This little pervert is obsessed. But then, a seductive smile curved her lips. You could do other things for me, too. While Leo was still processing that, she stepped forward, stood on her toes, and whispered in his ear. For example, late that night, long after his parents, Claire, and Anna were asleep in their rooms, Leo finally recovered from the example his girlfriend had whispered. Wiping a trickle of blood from his nose, he sat down at the computer in the study. He powered it on, logged into AIM, and contacted the domain seller, Chunke. Without much fuss, they completed the transaction. Chunke listed the 3 domains Leo had chosen on the marketplace at their agreed-upon prices. Leo plugged his online banking USB key into the computer, entered his password, and finalized the payment. The deal was done. Besides the digital contract, Chunke promised to mail the physical paperwork to the address Leo had provided. But as of that moment, 2 critically important domains officially belonged to him. After signing off, Leo stared at the 2 URLs sitting quietly in his account page. He took a deep breath. The cool night air filled his lungs, invigorating him, filling him with a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction. Everything was in place. Now, all he had to do was wait for the right moment. The right moment had not yet arrived, but something else had. February 14th, Valentine's Day. The end of the winter break was approaching. Before heading back to campus, they had one last holiday to celebrate. Leo, Claire, Kevin, and Tessa made plans to hang out, double date just like old times. Except this time, there was a third wheel. A very beautiful third wheel. That afternoon, in the plaza at the foot of Beacon Hill Park, Anna was buzzing with excitement. So, what's the plan for today? Oh, I'm so happy to be out with you beautiful ladies. Leo raised his hand. There are 2 guys here, you know. Anna shot him and Kevin a sideways glance. Yes, she sighed. There are 2 guys here. What a shame. She immediately turned, linking her arms with Claire and Tessa. Come on, let's ignore the smelly boys. Today is all about us. Claire and Tessa led her, laughing as Annie Cakes pulled them forward. Watching the 3 beautiful girls walk away, chatting and laughing, Leo felt a question mark pop up over his head. Wait, is today Galentine's Day or Valentine's Day? Why do I feel like we're the third wheels? Kevin, ever the optimist, was far more philosophical. Hey, it's all good. You gotta look at it from a different angle, Leo. 3 gorgeous girls are spending the day with us. That's a status symbol. The young mister. Zhao watched the girls' retreating backs, a grin stretching from ear to ear. This was a privilege most guys could only dream of. He was already planning how he was going to brag about it to his roommates back at school. The small town of Northwood didn't offer much in the way of entertainment, especially in the dead of winter. But luckily, the sun was out this afternoon, its warm rays making the crisp air feel pleasant rather than cold. Tessa suggested they take advantage of the nice weather and go for a walk up Beacon Hill Park again. Everyone readily agreed. The last time they were here was just before their final exams last summer. It felt like returning to a special place. The ticket price hadn't changed. The community center gate was closed this time, so Kevin regretfully announced he couldn't lead them on the free back route, and they dutifully lined up to buy tickets. While they waited, Leo looked around the park entrance, a wave of nostalgia washing over him. He remembered the weekend he'd coincidentally run into Claire here. She'd been wearing workout clothes, denim shorts that showed off her long, pale legs, so bright they made his eyes swim. A thought suddenly struck him. He glanced at his girlfriend. That time, you came to the park looking for me, didn't you? The girl beside him paused, then said with an air of perfect innocence, No, it was just a coincidence. Tickets purchased, the 5 of them started up the mountain path. In winter, the park was nearly empty, and the stone steps were slick with moisture. Leo instinctively reached out his hand to steady Claire. Be careful, don't slip. Claire took his hand just as naturally, a faint smile playing on her lips as she looked at him. The little idiot is learning, she thought. He doesn't need to make up some reasonable excuse anymore. Seeing this, Kevin immediately took his cue. He eagerly offered his hand to his own girlfriend. Honey, you hold my hand too. Don't fall. When there's a perfect answer key, even a fool knows how to copy. Tessa took her boyfriend's hand, a satisfied look on her face. At least this idiot wasn't like he was on Mount Jade, charging ahead on his own. He was finally starting to remember he had a girlfriend. Her 6 months of training hadn't been in vain. When climbing a mountain, someone always takes the lead. Kevin had abdicated his throne. Now, Annie Cakes took his place. Her long legs moved like a gazelle's, and she effortlessly bounded up the steps to a small landing, then turned and called back cheerfully, Hurry up, you guys. This mountain is pretty easy. Then she saw the 2 couples, holding hands, strolling leisurely up the path behind her. Anna. Suddenly, she felt like she didn't belong here. Her deck of cards and the city of Gotham were calling her name. At the summit, they found a familiar little wildlife exhibit. Compared to last summer, more than half the cages were gone. Most of the remaining animals were hibernating. There wasn't much to see, but it didn't dampen their spirits as they wandered around. They passed by a large, iron-barred enclosure with a pool. A familiar golden python was coiled up on a man-made rock, apparently not hibernating. As they approached, the snake stirred, slowly slithering toward the bars. Anna's eyes lit up. She pressed her hands against the railing, peering inside. Wow, so cute. Even though she'd seen it before, Tessa was still nervous. She instinctively pressed closer to her boyfriend. Kevin seized the opportunity to flex his boyfriend muscles, bravely wrapping his arm around her. Don't be scared, honey. I'm here. Anna shot the couple a sideways glance, unimpressed by their public display of affection. What's so scary? This little snake is adorable. It's perfectly reasonable for girls to be afraid of snakes, Kevin declared righteously, defending his girlfriend. You're the exception, Annie Cakes. Even Claire is afraid of them. He turned, only to see Claire standing beside Leo, completely unfazed by the approaching python. Claire, you're not scared anymore? Kevin asked, confused. Tessa looked at her best friend with the same curiosity. That's right, Leo chimed in. You were pretty scared last year. Under their collective gaze, Claire remained perfectly nonchalant. Oh, I was scared last year. I got over it. Last year, being scared was a necessary tactic for seduction, she thought. It created opportunities to get close to a certain little idiot. This year, I've already got the boyfriend. What's the point of being scared? Claire gave the approaching python a cool, dismissive glance. Her calm, icy eyes met the snake's. A moment later, the python got scared. It turned and slithered hastily away. Kevin, Tessa, and Anna. ? By the time they came down from the mountain, it was getting dark. Time for dinner. Even though it was Valentine's Day, the two couples weren't fussy about making a big deal of it. Just being with the person you liked was enough. As for Anna, she couldn't care less. Like a reader hooked on a romance novel, she was perfectly happy just watching the couples be disgustingly cute and grinning like an idiot. She could get full on that alone. When in doubt about where to eat, the answer was always Pop's Fry Shack. Forget some fancy, upscale restaurant. A pile of fried skewers was far more satisfying. The five of them sat down, ordered, and got some beer. Kevin, ever the agent of chaos, tried to order a bottle of hard liquor but was unanimously shot down. When the food arrived, they ate, drank, and laughed. To everyone's surprise, Anna turned out to be an impressive drinker, downing glass after glass without pausing, encouraging everyone else to keep up. Kevin was floored. Holy shit, Annie Cakes, you're a goddess of booze. Tessa covered her mouth and giggled. A single girl can drink 1,000 cups and not get drunk. But when she meets someone she likes, she'll probably pass out after one sip. Inspired by Anna's gusto, the others ordered another round of beer, the atmosphere growing even more lively. When they were finally full, they paid the bill and stepped out of the restaurant. The cold night wind hit them, a sobering shock. Leo and Kevin went to the smoothie shop next door to get hot drinks for the girls. The three girls sat on a bench outside the Fry Shack waiting. Watching the two guys hurry off, Tessa sighed contentedly. In the cold winter wind of Northwood, a beautiful girl with long, straight black hair leaned back on the bench, slightly drunk. She turned her head, watching the traffic and the couple strolling by, a smile on her face but a cool emptiness in her eyes. Anna and Claire were so similar, yet so different. In terms of looks, intelligence, and future potential, both were top tier. But Claire was outwardly cold and inwardly warm. Beneath her cool exterior burned a warm flame, and when she found someone worthy of her trust, it would erupt with unprecedented passion. Anna was the opposite. To most people, she was the undisputed campus belle of East Bay Financial, always smiling, seemingly friendly and approachable. But only a select few knew her true nature. Outwardly warm, inwardly cold. Her smiling eyes held a detached, scrutinizing indifference. Only with the very few people she truly trusted did she let down her guard. And almost no one ever made it into that inner circle. Hearing Anna's casual words, Tessa was taken aback. Beside her, Claire's expression flickered with a mix of complexity and resignation. My dear friend, my sister-in-law, she thought. She was the same in our past life. The influence of her family, the deep-seated emotional scars, they weren't easy to heal. The mood on the bench suddenly grew heavy. Sensing she had dampened their spirits, Anna turned and smiled brightly again. Of course, if the right person came along, I wouldn't be opposed. How about you two linear boyfriends for a while? Out of the question, Claire replied without hesitation. No way, Tessa said, just as firmly, then added with sincere earnestness, my Kevin isn't good enough for you. Kevin, once again, had taken a stray bullet. It was hard to say whether he should feel proud or hurt. Just then, they saw Leo and Kevin walking back from the smoothie shop. Anna gracefully stood up, stretched, and said with a cheerful smile, "So, for now, I'm not going to think about all that. Being single is pretty great, too." With that, she skipped off to meet the approaching guys. "Leo, you pighead, what did you get me?" "Hey, why does my bubble tea have so few pearls? Are you two discriminating against me?" On the bench, Claire and Tessa watch her go. They exchange a look. Tessa frowned. "It's going to be really hard for Annie Cakes to find someone suitable, isn't it?" Claire nodded, her gaze on Anna in the distance. She sighed softly. "We'll have to take it slow, and keep an eye out for her." Next to Beacon Hill Park was Northwood's largest movie theater. It was still early, so the five of them wandered over. A movie was just about to start. They bought tickets, popcorn, and found their seats. The two couples sat on either side, with Anna, the single third wheel, taking the prime seat in the middle, flanked by Claire and Tessa. Since it was Valentine's Day, it was a romance movie. Leo and Kevin had a plan. When you take your girlfriend to the movies, you're not really there for the movie, right? You wait for the lights to go down, and then you take the opportunity to get a little closer, a little cozier. It was a great plan, except when the movie started and the two guys tried to make a move, they were shocked to find their girlfriends were totally blowing them off. Both of them were, consciously or not, leaning toward Anna in the middle. One was feeding her popcorn. The other had her arm linked with Anna's, offering her a sip of her drink. Their earlier conversation had made them both feel extra protective of Anna. As a result, they were unconsciously treating their boyfriends like thin air, focused only on caring for their friend. When Leo and Kevin stubbornly tried to hold their girlfriends' hands, their hands were slapped away with a whispered reprimand. "Stop it. Watch the movie." "Leo, ? Kevin, ? The two bros were stunned. They stared at each other across the three girls, tiny question marks popping up over their heads. Seriously? Is the world of romance this crowded? Why were we the ones who got squeezed out? Later that night, back at home, Leo's parents were already in bed. While Anna was in the bathroom, Claire and Leo sat on the living room sofa. "We need to find a boyfriend for Annie Cakes," Claire said. Leo nodded gravely. "Definitely. So she'll stop interrupting our time together." As he spoke so righteously, he casually started stroking his girlfriend's hand, determined to make up for lost time at the theater. A second later, she slapped his hand away. "I'm being serious. With her standards, it won't be easy to find someone who's good enough for her. Do you have anyone you can recommend?" Leo paused, his flirtatious mood vanishing. He thought about it seriously. His first thought was his other two roommates from room 520. Marco? Absolutely not. It wasn't that he was worried Marco's playboy ways would hurt Anna. On the contrary, with Marco's level of skill, Annie Cakes would probably play him into oblivion. This wasn't about protecting his cousin. It was about protecting Marco. Dylan? The thought made him shudder. It would be a bloodbath. Poor Dylan, who hadn't even made it out of the tutorial level, facing a hell-difficulty final boss like Anna. That was like sending a guppy to fight a great white shark. You might as well just put him out of his misery now. He was right. Finding a boyfriend for Anna was not going to be easy. Seeing Leo lost in thought, Claire's expression was understanding.